Good afternoon. If everyone can take their seats, we're going to get started. Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, January the 24th, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting of the Peoria City Council to order. I'd also like to welcome everyone in our City Council chambers, as well as our listening audience at WCBU. I'd also like to welcome the audience watching on cable channel 22. The council mics are open. Please call the roll.
Mayor Ali,
Present.
Councilmember Allen, Councilmember Sear, Councilmember Graham, Councilmember Jackson,
Here.
Councilmember Jensen, Councilmember Kelly, Councilmember Euler, Councilmember Riggenbach, Councilmember Ruckriegel, and Councilmember Valpula.
Present.
You have a quorum present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please join me, everyone, and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Also, I saw the obituary of a longtime city staffer, Billy Ambrose. I'd like for you to please keep his family in your prayers. Thank you. Madam Clerk,
We are at proclamations.
we have two proclamations today. The first proclamation recognizes the Junior League of Peoria for the Little Black Dress Initiative. Here with us is Heather Euler, the Chair of Fund Development, and Barbara Maladonata, the co-chair of Fund Development. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
I'm going to read the proclamation and then ask that Ms. Euler and Mrs. Maladonata make some comments, and then we're going to hear some comments also from Councilman Euler. Whereas the Junior League of Peoria is an organization of women who are committed to volunteerism and improving the community through action and leadership. Established in 1936, the Junior League of Peoria has contributed to the Peoria Playhouse Children's Museum, hosted the popular Julep's Closet, and organized Keepsakes for Kids, among many other programs. And whereas with a current membership of over 300, the Junior League of Peoria is proud to contribute to programs that directly impact our community. Whereas the Little Black Dress Initiative originated with the Junior League of London in 2014 to raise awareness of poverty and related issues. Participants were asked to wear their little black dress, considered a staple in the closet of many women, or a black outfit for 5 days to raise awareness. And whereas the Junior League of Peoria has joined other leagues around the nation in participating in this initiative while also focusing on food insecurity. And whereas this campaign is open to everyone, you can participate by wearing the same black outfit through the week of February the 13th through February the 17th to illustrate the lack of options faced by someone living in poverty, or you can contribute financially to the initiative. Additional information may be found at www.juniorleagueofpeoria.org. And whereas the Junior League of Peoria will host a cocktail party on Thursday, February the 16th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. to celebrate the Little Black Dress Initiative and announce their new community impact focus. Now, therefore, I, Rita Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, and on behalf of the Peoria City Council, do hereby acknowledge the Junior League of Peoria's Little Black Dress Initiative in Peoria, Illinois.
On behalf of the Junior League of Peoria, I'd like to thank you to the City Council and Mayor Rita Ali for this proclamation recognizing the Junior League for our work on behalf of the Little Black Dress Initiative that will be happening this year, February 13th through February 17th. The Little Black Dress Initiative helps us remember that not everyone in our community have the same ability to make the choices that we are able to make every day. During the week of the LBDI, we wear the same little black dress or black outfit, which helps show that everyone that lives within poverty doesn't have the same choice. Our choice that's taken away that week is simply what we get to wear. We're able to show this by, as I said, what we're wearing that week, sorry. Although it may be a simple choice, some mothers or fathers that have to make the decision to choose between putting food on the table or taking their child to a doctor. They may have to choose between having money to take the bus to work or give their child a healthy breakfast. As the Junior League of Peoria transitions into our new community focus of mental health awareness, we will be advocating to help with the link between not having access to mental health services or the ability to pay for the best mental health treatment available due to income constraints as well as other hurdles. As the City of Peoria has one of the poorest zip codes within the state of Illinois, many members of our community have to make these choices every day. If you're interested in participating as an advocate, you can receive your button and training by visiting the Junior League of Peoria's website and making your donation of $20. Thank you so much for the acknowledgement to the Junior League that we received tonight and for helping us spread what we're trying to do and making our small part be part of the community. As we work towards finding a solution in the surrounding area of mental health, we invite you all to join us at our cocktail party celebrating the Little Black Dress Initiative Week while raising funds to help assist those in poverty. We also will be discussing our next community focus, mental health, and how we hope to work with the community and all of our partners. We hope to see you on February 16th. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the Junior League via our website.
Thank you very much. Remember those dates, February the 13th through February the 17th. I've got lots of black in my closet, so I'll be pulling it out. Our next proclamation is recognizing the Global Fest. We will hear from Franklin Folger and Sarah Freeland. And after I read the presentation, we'll also, afterwards we'll hear from Councilman Valpula. But before we go there, Councilman Euler on the Little Black Dress Initiative.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I probably won't wear a little black dress, but I will wear a black suit. I did make my contribution to be an advocate, and I have my button on, and I've had a few people ask me about that tonight, and I want to thank the Junior League for the contributions that they make to our community and the impact awareness issues that they take pride in contributing to and bringing awareness to and raising funds for. It's advocacy like that that really makes a difference, and we're proud to have your contribution to Peoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Euler. So our next proclamation is recognizing the Global Fest. Mr. Folger, Ms. Freeland, thank you for being here. Whereas Central Illinois has become home to a dynamic ethnic, cultural, religious, and socioeconomic diversity that offers numerous advantages to the businesses that open their doors here and the community members who reside here. Global Fest Central Illinois is a community effort created to celebrate the diverse array of cultures that exist in our region. Whereas Global Fest Central Illinois creates the opportunity for diverse groups to work together to celebrate their cultures by seeking to elevate awareness of the dynamic opportunities and talents present in Central Illinois while drawing attention to the rich cultural and ethnic diversity in this region. And whereas the community is invited to the inaugural Global Fest Central Illinois on February the 11th, 2023 at 4:00 p.m. at 5 Points, Washington, located at 360 North Wilmore Road in Washington, Illinois. Attendees will partake in cultural journeys through global music, dance, languages, and foods found locally, and will celebrate with a premier annual event. Now, therefore, I, Rita Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, do hereby acknowledge Global Fest, Central Illinois.
Thank you, Mayor Ali, Councilman Vapula, and all of you for recognizing the significance of this event. All too often, Peoria and Central Illinois are cast as places that are not welcoming to outsiders. As we know, there is nothing that could be further from the truth. The Central Illinois neighborhood is rich indeed with culture and diversity. 8 months ago, our committee members created Global Fest to celebrate this diverse and inclusive nature of the real Central Illinois. The event on February 11th at 5 Points, Washington, will draw hundreds of people together to immerse themselves in the wonderful cultural diversity within our region. With educational booths, food, clothing, music, and dance, people from all over across Central Illinois will be able to immerse themselves in the cultures of the many people who have become home and neighbors for us in Central Illinois. Thank you for recognizing Global Fest, and we hope to see you there.
Thank you very much. I remember, Mr. Folger, when you shared that vision with me maybe a little bit over a year ago, so I'm really excited that it's come to fruition. Councilmember Vapula.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All I would say is I am a part of this wonderful event, and I believe that such kind of events will promote oneness in the community. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk?
We are at the minutes.
Councilmember Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move to approve the minutes of the joint City Council and Town Board meeting held on January 10th, 2023, as printed.
Seconded by Council Member Sear. Any questions? Can I get a screen? Cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
23-013 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to approve an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Peoria and the Dunlap Community Unified School District regarding the Medina Plains Allen Road Increment Financing District.
Madam Clerk, would you mind repeating that, please?
Sure. 23-013 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to approve an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Peoria and the Dunlap Community Unified School District regarding the Medina Plains Allen Road Business Park Tax Increment Financing District.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that Councilman Sear might have wanted to make a few introductory statements.
Councilmember Sear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Before I turn it over to City Manager, I'd like to make a few brief comment and also to move a motion. First of all, this project we've been working on for many weeks, and I want to thank and I want to acknowledge a few people. Some of them are, one lady is here tonight. I want to acknowledge her, and I also want to acknowledge a couple of my colleagues, Councilman Chuck Grab and Zach Orler, for helping me out throughout these negotiations. Also, we have tonight here in the room, we have the president of the Dunlap School District, Dr. Abby Humble, is with us tonight. Dr. Humble, thank you very much for being here and being part of these negotiations the last many weeks. So with this, I'd like to move to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Peoria and the Dunlap School District regarding Medina Plains Allen Road Business Park as a TIF district.
That was seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel. Discussion? Please cast your ballots. Oh, okay. Sorry. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just very briefly, what we worked out with this intergovernmental agreement with the Dunlap School Board is a revenue sharing agreement as part of the tax increment financing district. And in it, there are 4 elements of that revenue sharing that are laid out. First is if there is an anchor development that is specific to a couple of parcels, they would be eligible for 15% of the incremental taxes that are generated from that property. The rest of the TIF area, they would be eligible for 22.5% of the TIF increment. And then if there's any residential that's built out in this plan where there's none planned, and there's not been any anticipated residential development, they would be provided 35% of the increment because of the impact that it would have on the schools. And then lastly, if the anchor development doesn't proceed, that 22.5% figure would move up to 25%. So that's really the terms of the arrangement. This recognizes, I think, that the Dunlap School Board is predominantly funded by property taxes, almost entirely. And so this was part of the negotiations that we worked out with the district over the last several weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any additional discussion? Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to commend Councilman Sear for advocating to do this carve-out. It's something that, since I've been on the council for almost 10 years, I've been advocating since I got on the council that more of our TIFs carve out school districts. And this is very well done. As an attorney who has represented school districts for a number of years, this is a really well thought out agreement, and it gives the Dunlap School District a number of protections. So I'm very happy to see this come forward. And again, I just wanted to thank Councilman Sear for his work on this, as well as, I guess, Councilman Grab and Euler. This is definitely a TIF that I can support, since it does have that carve out for the school district. Thank you.
I also want to thank Councilman Sear for your leadership in this negotiation. I thank all the partners, the parties that assisted, as well as Dr. Humbles and those individuals on the Dunlap School Board and the attorneys that were involved. And I know it took a while to get there, but I'm glad that we got there. Thank you also to Council Hayes and City Manager Urick for your leadership as well. So we're at a good point here. Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd be remiss if I didn't comment on the fact that we talk at length about the fact that we need economic growth, and these are the tools that will provide us the ability to have economic growth and a vision to start to do something with an area that hasn't changed. And thank you, Councilmember Sear, for your leadership in this. It's incredibly important that we do things like this to move our community forward and create jobs, which will drive the tax base, which allows us to provide basic public services. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also want to echo the sentiments of everyone who worked on this initiative. As someone who represents constituents that attend both Peoria Public Schools and also Dunlap, this is a good thing to see that this school district out in Dunlap will still be supported while also spurring some potential economic growth in this area as we look to really develop that area. I think there are some good things on the horizon. I don't want to say anything too early, but I think this is a good step in the right direction. So thank you to everyone who worked on this initiative, and it's just great to see when different government entities can really sit down, talk about the issues, and then come up with solutions that are mutually beneficial to all constituents involved. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other discussion? Okay. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
We have one public hearing. 23-002 is a reconvened public hearing regarding the proposed Medina Plains Allen Road Business Park Tax Increment Financing District.
This public hearing regarding the proposed Medina Plains Allen Road Business Park Tax Increment Financing District, or TIF, is being held pursuant to Chapter 65 of the Illinois Compiled Statutes, Section 5/11-74.4-5, and public notice. We will first hear from our city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In 1993, there were few development sites remaining within the city of Peoria, and that led to an outmigration of Peoria's population. In order to address that trend, the city entered into intergovernmental agreements with Peoria County and the Greater Peoria Sanitary District in order to develop a growth management policy. One of the strategies in that policy was for us to pay for sewers in certain parts of the region in order to try and facilitate growth and development. We did facilitate residential development. We haven't been as successful in facilitating industrial development. So Growth Cell 2 was the area where this TIF is currently proposed to be located, was principally designed to provide new commercial development and industrial and business growth opportunities. It's predominantly zoned industrial, and since that establishment of that growth cell back in the mid-90s, we've seen very little industrial development that has occurred due to the need for infrastructure such as roads. Without having this industrial land available in the city, we're at a competitive disadvantage. And we've seen that over the last several years. Our economic development team has worked, and we've been at that competitive disadvantage of being able to find industrial properties for people to put into the city of Peoria. So this past year, what we've tried to do is to create this Medina Plains Allen Road Business Park TIF to provide that mechanism to pay for infrastructure improvements and to address the need for industrial development inside the city of Peoria. What we've seen in this area is that the proposed TIF district, this area that's bounded in black on the screen, that accepts those parcels that are shaded, they're not part of the TIF district, has seen a 10.2% decline in EAV since 2016. And to put that into perspective, the city has seen a decline in EAV during that same period of time of 6.2%. So it's declining at a rate that's faster than the city of Peoria. And that's declining at a rate that's nearly double the EAV decline that the school district has faced. So it is an area that is not growing, and it's an area that needs some assistance. So we hired the firm of Jacob & Klein to work with us, and we have Steve Klein and Herb Klein that are here, and Herb Klein is here that's going to talk about the factors that show why this area qualifies to be a TIF district. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Klein right now.
Thank you, Mr. Urick, and thank you, Mayor. We've had the pleasure, my name is Herb Klein, I'm an attorney with Jacob & Klein, and Steve Klein. spelled differently, no relation, is the president of the Economic Development Group, which is a municipal consulting firm that we've had the pleasure of working together with and with the city officials in the process of establishing this TIF district. And as Mr. Urick said, the map of the proposed area is on the screen there. The idea behind the TIF district is to alleviate the blighting and adverse conditions that we found present throughout the area, to promote private investment and create a financing arm to offer an incentive to the private developers to develop in the area, to put the Peoria on a advantage in attracting new industrial and commercial users, and also to provide some assistance for the city infrastructure that's needed to support that private development, such as the roads that were mentioned. When we started the study, we were looking at about 141 parcels, 141 unique parcel identification numbers as established by the county, and we found that nearly 81% of them qualified for inclusion in a TIF district under the Illinois statute. Joint Review Board was held on December 15th, 2022. That's a board makeup of a representative of all the taxing districts that have the authority to tax in the proposed area. And I'm pleased to report that that Joint Review Board recommended and approved a motion to the City Council that the redevelopment project area and plan satisfied the requirements and eligibility criteria as set forth in the Illinois TIF Act. This public hearing initially convened on January 10th. On January 12th, we placed on file, with the help of the city staff, a revised TIF plan. We're now down to 129 parcels. There were a couple parcels that we initially studied that did not annex at this time, and that affected their eligibility to be in the TIF district, as well as contiguity of a couple other parcels. The TIF has to be contiguous. It also has to be, all the parcels to be included have to be annexed into the city at the time that you adopt the ordinance establishing the TIF. So those 129 parcels, we feel we have very good qualifications, and Steve Klein of the Economic Development Group is going to hit on those a little more specifically.
Thank you, Herb. So within the boundary area that you see on the screen, and also on page 4 of the summary that was distributed or is available tonight, the boundary, as Herb mentioned, has 129 total parcels within it. That's accepting those that are shaded. And the city is making findings within this area that, as revised, 79.8%, roughly 80% of the area does meet or exceed the minimum qualifications for tax increment financing. The minimum acceptable threshold on a percentage basis for a redevelopment project area is 51%. So we feel very confident that the area is certainly qualified for tax increment financing, because not only is the percentage fairly high, but we also are required to document and find qualification factors that exist to a real meaningful extent and are distributed throughout the entire area, and that is the case. Of the 129 parcels that are within that area, 83 of them have some type of a structure on them, a building. They're improved. The qualification factors for an improved property is somewhat different than for a vacant property. We don't have time tonight to go into all the details for that, but I can tell you that about 75% of the improved properties do meet the qualifications. And of the 107 structures that are within the improved areas, we found that there were about 62% of those were of the age 35 years or older, which is an important factor, because this means that the TIF area qualifies not only in part as a blighted area because of the growth and the lack of improvement in assessed valuation, for example, that Mr. Urick spoke to, but also because of the age and the condition of the properties. It qualifies as what's called a conservation area. It's a combination of a blighted and conservation area. And conservation area means that there are significant qualifying factors of deterioration, absence of public infrastructure, and other amenities to make the properties attractive for development. And if they're not reinvested in soon, they could be at risk of becoming further blighted. On a vacant side, there's 46 vacant parcels. 91% of those we're making a finding are qualified, and the qualification factors are based essentially on two factors. One, they're based on the large part of the area that you'll see is vacant of the larger tracts, lack stormwater facilities, and per the engineers, a professional engineer's opinion that is also included in the redevelopment plan, we've documented that these areas are going to require substantial investment with regard to stormwater facilities, which adds a lot of cost to redevelopment of these areas. That contributes toward the qualification of the vacant properties by virtue of the fact that they're going to require additional attention with regard to stormwater. The other significant qualifier for the vacant areas is that the city of Peoria, as of August of 2022, had a unemployment rate that was 6.2%, as was reported by the Illinois Department of Employment Security, which is based on Bureau of Labor Statistics data, that with a unemployment rate yet of 6.2% within 6 months of when the city is establishing the TIF district means that it is an industrial park conservation area. And the 6.2% is significant because it's 100% of what the U.S. unemployment average was at the time, and being over 6%, that's a single qualifier for those properties that are zoned for industrial use. And as we indicated earlier, majority of the area is zoned industrial, but 36 of the vacant properties are indeed qualified. Out of the 46 are qualified as industrial park conservation area. Mr. Urick spoke to the lack of growth in the assessed valuation. 4 out of the last 5 years, the assessed value of the area certainly has not kept up with the consumer price index, and the area as a whole that we're talking about, the 129 parcels, the equalized assessed value of that area represents less than 1% of the city of Peoria's total equalized assessed value. So as far as an EAV standpoint, it's a small area, and it has a lot of room to grow. One of the things I did want to also mention is that there were 5 properties that were annexed recently that are included within the proposed TIF area. 4 of those properties are tax exempt. They were city-owned properties that are essentially former railroad, unused railroad properties. And there's 1 private property that annexed recently that is included in the 5. The 4 properties that had previously been included in the area that are not annexing at this time were removed. That's the change in the map. And because of the 4 properties that were removed for lack of being within the city of Peoria, that affected some additional properties for contiguity. So with that, this is part of that growth cell number 2 that we hope will prosper by having the ability to use tax increment financing. The city's plan is looking at attracting $374 million, hopefully, of new private investment over the life of the TIF district, and that's going to have to be supported with a little over $216 million worth of private infrastructure as well. But that's the TIF area in a very brief summary. If you need any more information, please let us know.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Klein. And Mr. Klein. At this point, I'd like to request a motion to open the public hearing. Moved by Council Member Sear, seconded by Council Member Jensen. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Jensen?
I don't have my light on.
Okay. Can you cast your ballot? Motion passes unanimously. there are any individuals that wish to provide comment, please approach the podium, state your name for the record, and provide your comments. If there are any individuals that wish to provide comment regarding the hearing on the Medina Plains Allen Road Business Park TIF, please approach the podium and state your name for the record and provide your comments. And last, if there are any individuals that wish to make comment, please approach the podium, state your name for the record, and provide your comments. Thank you. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing? Moved by Councilmember Sears, seconded by Councilmember Allen. Any discussion? Please cast your ballots. Yes. Did your button not come on? Okay.
Sluggish.
Okay.
You know, I have to look at the pictures of the mayors who have served. And I have to take a look at the last board. Right above Councilor Valpila's head, there is one mayor out of the four, Jim Maloof. Everybody scoffed when he began discussion along with the city manager of that day, Peter Korn, about growth sales strategies. There were people that were doubters. There were people who were saying that it was going to take away from the heritage historic neighborhoods, that this was a bad move. It would dilute the strength of our city. This is payday. I know he would be so proud to see some of the accomplishments that not only have occurred or are occurring as a result of our actions this evening, but have occurred in the past. Those councils, previous councils, were correct. And that mayor, Jim Maloof, and his city manager, our city manager then, Peter Korn, they led. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for bringing that historical perspective.
Thank you.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. It was moved by Councilmember Sear and seconded by Councilmember Allen. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at the consent agenda. 23-014 is a communication from the Mayor and Corporation Council with a request to approve the declaration of local state of emergency. 23-015 is a communication with a request to approve the sole source emergency purchase from Laser Electric, Inc. in the amount of $54,514.40 for the Sterling in Nebraska signal mast arm. 23-016 is a communication with a request to approve a 2-year contract from PS Tracks for inventory software in the amount of $47,450 for the first year, $24,950 for the second year, for a total amount of $72,400. 23-017 is a communication with a request to approve an agreement with CrowdStrike to provide cybersecurity technology in the amount of $59,106.02. 23-018 is a communication with a request to approve an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Peoria and Greater Peoria Sanitary District to line selected city sanitary sewer pipes in the low bid amount of $123,720 with an additional authorization of $12,372, 10%, for contingencies for a total amount of $136,092. 23-019 is a communication with a request to approve and authorize the city manager to extend the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Peoria and AFSCME Local 3464 for January 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2025. 23-020 is a communication with a request to approve an increase to the intergovernmental agreement budget between the City of Peoria and Greater Peoria Sanitary District to clean and televise the city's combined sewer overflow outfall lines in the amount of $53,000. 23-021 is a communication with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class R3 single-family residential district for a short-term rental for the property located at 5006 North Edgebrook Drive, Peoria, Illinois. 23-022 is a communication with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class R4 single-family residential district for a short-term rental at 1805 North Prospect Road, Peoria, Illinois. 23-023 is a communication with a request to adopt an ordinance amending the Peoria Urban Enterprise Zone to include the boundaries of Peoria Stadium and parcels in MacArthur Corridor, Knoxville Corridor, Wisconsin Business Corridor, and Medina Plains Allen Road Business Park. 23-024 is a communication with a request to deny the site application for a Class C grocery liquor license with the retail sale of alcohol for Par One Mini Mart, Inc., doing business as Save More Supermarket, 200 North MacArthur Highway, Suite 4, 5, and 6, with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to deny. And 23-025 is a communication with a request to approve the site application to move a Class A tavern liquor license with on-site consumption and retail sale of alcohol for 8-Bit Inc., doing business as 8-Bit Arcade Bar from 100 State Street, Suite A, to 619 Southwest Water Street, Suite 1A, contingent upon the issuance of all appropriate permits and a certificate of occupancy, with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve, and that concludes our consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there items to remove from consent? Councilmember Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Item 23-019.
Anyone else? Are your buttons working? Councilmember Velpula?
Madam Mayor, 23-017 and 23-023.
Can you try your buttons again? Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 23014, 23016.
Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item number 23-0, I'm sorry, 23-024. He has withdrawn the proposal.
Say that again, the last part.
The,
Denial, you mean?
yes, he has withdrawn it, so
Yes.
we could just.
Oh, he's withdrawn?
Yeah.
Okay. Other items to remove? Any other items to remove? Yes.
Yes. Abstain. So if somebody wants to signal you, they want to talk, they're not going to be able to do it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Can you try it? Can you signal me? Yeah, it's working now. Okay. Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to pull something from consent? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the other items on the consent agenda, moved by Councilmember Allen, seconded by Councilmember Greb? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
23-014 is a communication from the Mayor and Corporation Council with a request to approve the declaration of local state of emergency.
Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Corporation Counsel, I'd like to ask you if among the reasons for an emergency declaration is that people can attend meetings remotely. If the council passed a resolution or an ordinance that says that people can attend remotely for a commission or for the council or whatever, is that against state law?
So state law limits a municipality's ability to allow remote attendance outside of a disaster declaration to a limited number of circumstances related to employment, illness, or illness of a family member. And so those very restrictive elements are council members sometimes can take advantage of, but for instance, they're not able to attend remotely when they're simply on vacation, which they're welcome to do, but they can't vote remotely.
Okay.
So in a disaster declaration, if the if the public body holds that the remote attendance is available, then those people can attend remotely just because there's a disaster declaration. It's my understanding that our boards and commissions have expressed a desire, because people still are very concerned about transmission of COVID. Some people are not as protected by the vaccines, and they rely on social distancing and not mixing with the public in order to stay healthy. And so our boards and commissions have expressed to our staff that they would prefer to leave that in place, because there is still a declaration of emergency related to COVID, and some of our boards and commissions are feeling like their members might be more willing to participate if they can do so remotely.
Thank you. I was hoping we could make such an exception, but I think what you're telling me is that we cannot.
Right. The Open Meetings Act includes a home rule preemption, and so we're very restricted in what we can do. And within the parameters of the Open Meetings Act, those restrictions aren't sufficient to meet the request, at least, that's pending from our boards and commissions. I will say that there has been legislation in the past couple sessions of our General Assembly that would liberalize those remote attendance rules and make it a prerogative, more of a prerogative of local governments, but that has not advanced in the State House as yet.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll not be making the motion, though.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve item number 23-014, moved by Councilmember Riggenbach, seconded by Councilmember Jackson? Any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Kelly. Madam Clerk?
23-016 is a communication from the City Manager and Fire Chief with a request to approve a 2-year contract from PS Tracks for inventory software in the amount of $47,450 for the first year and $24,950 for the second year, for a total amount of $72,400.
Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, was this contract put out for bid. I did not see anything about that in the council communication.
Thank you. I will let the police chief talk about the procurement process that he's gone through with this.
Thank you.
Or the fire chief, excuse me. Sorry, chief.
Fetchevery, I'd like to come up. No.
Yeah.
We started on this process in spring of 2022, working with Justin Danius in purchasing, Director Craddy, and Jessica in IS. And we did put this out for bid in the fall of 2022, and we waited until 2023, so it hit that budget.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Allen. Any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
23-017 is a communication from the City Manager and Information Systems Director with a request to approve an agreement with CrowdStrike to provide cybersecurity technology in the amount of $59,106.02.
Member Velpula?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We just got to know what happens when the bad actors play, and we got frozen speakers and all. But then on a lighter note, so I just wanted to know, in a layman terms, what this is all about. And I read through the communication, and there are some obligations that we need to have with regards to the insurance policy, which is listed in Section 20. And then followed by a question, where is the software going to be used, and what kind of equipment is the contract talking about?
Mr. Manager, or
Thank you. I'm going to ask our Assistant City Manager to come forward and talk about this item.
Yes, thank you, Manager Urick. And I know our IS Director, who should be here, but I will try my best to answer, and whatever I can't clearly answer for you, I'll make sure we get an answer to you immediately. So we did an assessment a year and a half ago that told us some of the areas of vulnerability that we needed to address, as well as we had conversations with our risk management staff in looking at where we need to ensure our assets as it relates to our digital as well as infrastructure from our standpoint from our IS infrastructure. With that being said, we began a process of evaluating what infrastructures need to be put in place. And in doing so, we recognized that we did not have the internal capacity to do that, and that's why we're beginning to look at, through a procurement process, CrowdStrike was the selected party to assist us with that implementation strategy. So we recognize as a lot of our systems begin to be less on-premise. So right now, we house a number of our services on-premise through our through our server systems. We are beginning to see a number of our assets being off-premise through the cloud. And so we need to have redundancy, and this will allow us to begin to build that infrastructure.
Can you speak about the obligations with regards to that Section 20 in that packet?
I will have to pull that up. I don't remember everything verbatim, sir. Sorry, I read it, but
no problem.
Cannot recall it verbatim. As it relates to Section 120, I can get back to you because I don't have it in front of me at this second unless you have it, Mayor, or sorry, Manager.
hard copy?
I have it electronically.
As part of the contract, Section 20 just requires the vendor to maintain certain levels of insurance, and that's outlined in that agreement there that just says, here's the levels of insurance that they need to carry, whether that's for workers' comp or employment, general liability, auto liability. It's all the requirements that we're asking of them to maintain so that we know that they're a viable entity.
Thank you, Manager Garrett.
I think that's it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Does that
Thank
answer
you,
your-
Assistant
That's by
Supervisor.
your answers. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
I move to approve item 23017.
Is there seconded by Councilmember Kelly? Any other discussion or questions? Mr. Manager, did you want to more say? No, okay. Looked like your button was on. Councilmember Jensen?
I just had one question. Taking a look at it, it says this will expire in less than a year. Is that right? October 30th of 2023?
No, we'll get that clarified in terms of the contract date and in terms of when that runs through. It shouldn't be for 10 months. I believe that this goes for a longer period of time. So we'll get that clarified.
Okay, but we're still going to approve it as it is?
At this point, I would encourage you to go forward with this. It would go into effect. It's cybersecurity work. If we need to come back with an amendment, we'll come back and bring that for your approval.
Okay, because it does say, it says that the contract was effective December 1st of 2019, which I believe is not accurate.
The contract, both these questions and your observation relate, I'm sorry, Mayor.
That's all right. Go ahead, right ahead.
Relate to a contract from some of the other parties that are part of the team of entities that deliver these services. And so the contract terms that we're approving actually are consistent with the council communication. This other relationship between the two parties that help the team that puts this together, that's likely to be extended. The contract that you're referring to is part of that team of entities that delivers these services.
Okay, so it's not the contract
It's not
between
the direct
the city.
contract between the city and the entity. That contract's going to be consistent with the council communication.
Okay, but so we don't have a copy of the actual agreement we're being asked to approve?
This agreement is based on a purchase order and standard terms, and I've reviewed those. I thought that they were part of this package, but and they're described in some of the later documents, but it's not set forth clearly in the council package. I apologize for that. Thank you.
Okay. I guess I would feel more comfortable than deferring this so we can see the contract, but
You want to move to defer to the next council meeting?
yeah, so moved.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Discussion, Councilmember Velpula.
Just following up on city manager's answer. So this is this contract will be effective for 4 years because the initial term that they quoted was 2019 to 2023.
No, I don't believe it's a 4-year contract. It's a purchase of software that we're using to provide cybersecurity software for us. So we'll come back to you with that clarification in 2 weeks.
I think.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Allen.
City Manager Yurick, is there any ramifications if we do defer this for 2 weeks as you foresee, sir?
None that we haven't had already.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. The motion is to defer this item to the next council meeting on February, is that the 14th, I think? No more discussion. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
23-019 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to approve and authorize the City Manager to extend the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Peoria and ASME Local 3464 for January 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2025.
Councilmember Euler.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. For 6 years, I've pulled these off consent agenda to vote no, and this is the first time I'm pulling it off to vote yes. It's no secret to anyone that I'm a huge proponent of the fact that I think staff should live in the city that they contribute to and receive paychecks from, and I think it's important for us to all be a part of a collective community that benefits the whole. It's important to our businesses and our residents that our officers and firefighters and EMS responders and community development agents, attorneys, all live in our community and are part of our community. And I've heard time and time again that we cannot get residency in a contract. It will never happen. Might as well forget it. Well, I'm excited to say that this contract has residency and it allows me to vote yes. So thank you to the union leader, Anthony Walraven, and his team who negotiated this, as well as our staff on the management side and HR and legal that negotiated this and set what I believe is a significant precedence for the city of Peoria and our contract negotiations to have our staff living here in our community with us. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I move to approve.
All right, is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
23-023 is a communication from the city manager with a request to adopt an ordinance amending the Peoria Urban Enterprise Zone to include the boundaries of Peoria Stadium and parcels in MacArthur Corridor, Knoxville Corridor, Wisconsin Business Corridor, and Medina Plains Allen Road Business Park.
Councilmember Velpula?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, this is just a clarification question. So we say that the Knoxville Corridor OSF Cancer Institute, does this dive into the MedTech that we are trying to work out, MedTech district? Or the Peoria Urban Enterprise Zone will take over that?
Yes, I can answer that question for you. The area that you're speaking to on Main Street going up the hill is already included in the enterprise zone.
Okay.
So this is expanding the area around the Knoxville corridor where OSF has been doing some commercial work, as well as a little bit further to where the hospital is also located.
So does this encompass the local headquarters of OSF as well?
That area is already in the enterprise zone as well. So we're expanding the enterprise zone. Okay. We're not taking parcels out of the enterprise zone.
Thank you so much for the clarification. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Do you want to make a motion?
And I move to approve 23-023.
Okay. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Allen. Discussion, Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is it possible to throw that well, this is on the enterprise zone. Okay, so I have one further question, Mr. Manager, on this item. We discussed tax abatement earlier today. Does the same rule apply for sales tax, for the sales tax construction, sales tax on construction materials? That tends to be an enterprise zone feature and not a TIF feature. When we have them overlap, can you still do it? You're sure?
I'm 100% positive. Yes, you can. Okay. So in the Councilman Kelly and I had a conversation earlier today about the overlapping of a tax increment financing district with the enterprise zone, and within an area where there is a TIF overlaid with the enterprise zone, you cannot take the property tax abatement. You can avail yourselves of the TIF incentive for property taxes, but not the property tax abatement. What you can do, though, is you can avail yourselves of the sales tax exemption on building materials purchased inside the state of Illinois. And so that is something that is allowable. The ordinance that's included in the packet references that, and that's something that you can utilize. In addition, there are utility taxes that you could be potentially exempt from, that in the enterprise zone you apply it, but that has to go to DCO at the state level. It's not locally administered. And then there's also a sales tax exemption on construction or on material or equipment that will be used for manufacturing purposes. And that, again, is managed by the state. And so if you're in an enterprise zone and you apply for that, you can get a tax exemption on that. But it has to be sourced in the state of Illinois in order to get that exemption. But yes.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome. Did you have something additional to add to that, Assistant Manager?
No, I believe the city manager answered that beautifully. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know if either the city manager or the assistant city manager wants to answer this. I've brought this up before, I think, when we've been asked to expand this enterprise zone. Can you explain just for the listeners, because I don't believe these are all contiguous. Do they have to be contiguous? I believe they don't.
They are contiguous. There are connector strips that are running in the public rights of way that connect all of the properties together to make sure that they are connected in one zone.
Okay, because I didn't see that in the maps that we had. I couldn't tell.
It would be impossible to see it on this map. It's almost impossible to see some of the parcels on this map because it's so big. But they are connected.
Okay, and then another question I have, once, if we approve this, will we be at our 10 square mile limit?
No, we're at, I think, just a little bit over 6 square miles right now currently.
Correct.
And then when we add these, what will we be at? Like,
Just a little bit over 6.5. We're only
oh, okay. I thought it was, we were adding more than that. Okay.
just
Thank
80
you.
parcels.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to stay here.
Any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously.
23-024 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to deny the site application for a Class C grocery liquor license with the retail sale of alcohol for Parwin Mini Mart, Inc., doing business as Save More Supermarket, 200 North MacArthur Highway, Suite 4, 5, and 6, with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to deny.
Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate or mention for those who were not aware that the applicant withdrew this application. Sometime today, I received an email from the clerk's office. So with that in mind, I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and vote to deny.
Should we go ahead and vote to manager, legal counsel?
The petitioner requested to withdraw the item, so I think a motion to just withdraw the item.
Withdraw,
from the
motion to withdraw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to make a motion to withdraw.
Yes.
Item number, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to withdraw item number 23024.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Councilmember Jensen. Discussion, Councilmember Graham?
Does a motion to withdraw sustain mean that they could come back before 1 year is up to apply again?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please.
I think that's the purpose of the motion to withdraw, so that they're not tainted with any limitation on bringing another matter forward.
So if we were to just deny it, they couldn't come back until after a year had elapsed, correct?
That is correct.
And First District Counselor wants to just withdraw it. Because that means it can come back sooner than 1 year. Well, withdrawing it would allow them to come back before 1 year is up. And I just don't know, I'm going to support you however you want to go on it. So,
We'll take that up at that time.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have had a couple of conversations, as a matter of fact, two with the petitioner, and he had two other individuals call me previously about this same project, and I had reiterated my concerns about this particular location, having been a chronic nuisance in the past, and had expressed my interest in not supporting any type of liquor license because of some of the problems the city is still trying to rectify with the current landlord. So that will continue to be my position on this particular location for now and the foreseeable future, unless, we see any noticeable improvement.
Okay. Councilman Riggenbach, did you have a comment?
I'm comfortable with the councilwoman's direction to withdraw. I would assuming this would be maybe for Corporation Counsel, if the petitioner asks to withdraw, it would be inappropriate for us to vote to deny. You're correct, right?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Euler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just for clarification, I'm curious, can we vote if a petitioner has already withdrawn?
Council?
I don't know the correct answer to that question, so I'm going to ask that that be deferred. I did not anticipate this discussion. I apologize to you, but I don't want to give you an uncertain or incorrect response.
I'm good with the withdrawal, just curious for future reference.
So the motion is to withdraw by Councilwoman Jackson. It was seconded by Councilmember Jensen. Thank you. Any other discussion? The motion is to withdraw. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at regular business. 23-026 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Public Works with a request for the following. A, approve the low bid of Illinois Civil Contractors, Inc. in the amount of $7,854,858.55 for the Combined Sewer Overflow Control Project Year 2. B, approve and execute the notice of intent to award in the amount of $7,854,858.55 contingent upon award of the IEPA loan for the Combined Sewer Overflow Control Project Year 2. And C, approve and authorize the City Manager to execute a contract for the Combined Sewer Overflow Control Project Year 2, and we'll need separate motions on all three.
Okay. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to turn it over to Director Powers, who is also going to then turn it over to our city engineer and the executive director of the Greater Peoria Sanitary District, Mr. Brian Johnson. But Mr. Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you,
Director,
Mayor,
yes.
councilors. Actually, what we want to do, and we took the opportunity to put this on regular business, just the sheer amount of the contracts, one. But two, this is the second year that we are working into our consent decree. And as I go back and think about the actual announcement when we came to this body and we had that success story, I don't recall if Brian and GPSD were here, so to celebrate that day or not. Were you here that night when we actually signed the consent decree? No. I'll tell you. So, but again, just as a point kind of leading into this, we are now into year 2. We want to take the opportunity to give you an overview of what happened in year 1, how it's going, what we plan in year 2. And again, I would be remiss not to say we've had a very willing and able partner with GPSD in the consent decree. And if it weren't for them sitting at the table with us, we wouldn't be here going forward as we are. So thanks, Brian, for that and your leadership there. And thanks for the opportunity to thank you for that. I don't have a great deal to say. Again, I believe this presentation will speak to what we are accomplishing. And then we can go forward with the motion and stand by for questions as you want. So with that, I'll turn it over to Deputy Director and City Engineer Andrea Kloffenstein.
Thank you for inviting us to give this presentation tonight.
Your mic on.
So for year 1, the project is ordered by Spring, Cornell, Adams, and Gardner. Within the project area, we installed building paper person lanes, installed sidewalk improvements,
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Mayor Ali, Council. Also like to recognize Trustee Steve Morris and Director of Engineering and Capital, Tim Leach, also in the audience with me tonight. I can't do anything by myself. I always need a good team behind me, so I appreciate their leadership. So I'm happy to provide this update on GPSD's side of the CSO equation. Our side is slightly different than the city in that we move first on a lot of the projects. Our deadlines are earlier defined projects that are well underway and hope to be done ahead of schedule. I'd like to say within original budgets, but COVID had a thing or two to say about that, so slightly amended. Within the first deadline we have coming up is January 1st, 2026, which includes the Riverfront Interceptor cleaning. The interceptor is just a very large pipe that City of Peoria and the surrounding area decided to form a sanitary district in the 1920s along the river and collect sewage that was otherwise going into the river. So that interceptor is in 3 phases of cleaning. We had to adjust our plans from 2 phases to 3 phases due to budgetary issues because of supply chain and COVID. Phase 1 is done. Phase 2 is in progress to be picked up in the spring, and Phase 3 the year after that. Spring, Caroline, and Cedar, Fayette, and Eaton control adjustments. If you go on this map and go from the blue dot in the upper right-hand corner all the way down to the orange dot right in the middle of that, that's the next phase here that is to be bid probably by the summer of this year. So that includes increasing capacity at a couple of those locations, including real-time control gates so that we can determine measures and flow measures within the Riverfront Interceptor and adjust accordingly, and then also make control adjustments in CSO facilities downtown. That's all to be done by 2026, and again, I hope to have all those projects out to bid by this summer. After that, January 1st, 2029 begins with South Street, and also investigation of some of the portions of the interceptor at that time after we have televised and cleaned the entire interceptor. And then also the consent decree calls for a joint study between GPSD and the city as to what to do on Dar Street. And then January 1st, 2032 is the final of our deadlines, Sanger Street, capacity improvements at that location, and then potential improvements in Dar Street as well. Total estimated revised costs are hovering for us around $30 million, which is a substantial investment in the city in the core areas of downtown. And all of this can be found on our website, gpsdnext.com. We put monthly dashboards that you can look at to see exactly where we're at on the status of these projects. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any questions? Here we have some questions. Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your presentation tonight. Deputy Director Klumpenstein, can you do us a favor for the listener who is still confused about what is the combined stormwater overflow, what is the stormwater utility fee that I'm paying? In layman terms, can you break it down for the listener that is saying, I'm seeing these projects that are happening for the combined stormwater overflow on the southern parts of the town, but we all know that there's some stormwater utility projects happening in other parts of town. Can you just, in layman terms, just for the listeners, kind of break down the differences of why certain areas are getting the combined stormwater overflow projects and why other areas are getting the stormwater utility projects?
Okay, I will try to make this as simple as I can. So we have 3 systems that convey sewage. So we have the sanitary sewer pipe, which is your toilet, your shower water, dishwasher, all of that goes in a pipe from your house all the way to GPSD's wastewater treatment plant. We also have the stormwater system, which are the inlets in the street, the creeks, the ravines that take stormwater runoff all the way to the river. The third system we have is the combined sewer overflow, or the combined sewer system. And it has stormwater runoff, so inlets that's capturing water in the street, but instead of going to the river, it goes into a combined sewer pipe and then goes to GPSD's treatment plant on a dry flow day. If we get a heavy rainstorm, there's too much rainwater in those pipes, and that's when there's not enough capacity, and it will overflow into the river. Does that make sense?
No, it does, and I just wanted to, put that out there again, just because I know it can still be somewhat confusing because this is relatively new to the constituents of Peoria. So thank you. I appreciate you letting me put you on the spot there. You broke it down very well, and we're very excited to see these projects occurring, especially as we've been paying into them now, and now to be able to see the fruit of some of that investment is going to be great for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Member Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess first I want to say I'm excited to see this finally coming to its fruition, like Councilman Allen said. My first, I think, executive session when I joined the council in September 2013 was talking about the CSO issue and the proposal that the EPA was trying to get us to agree to, which was a 100% gray solution, not green at all. It would have cost the city, I think, at least 3 times as much. It was not sustainable. It was not environmentally friendly. It would take only laborers from not only outside of the state and the city, but outside of the country to build. So it took a long time for us to get here, and I know it's a big, huge project and expense, but I'm happy to see it finally beginning and work being done. And I want to thank you. I know Engineer Kloppenstein, you've kind of been involved with it since the beginning, as well as the city manager and all the staff, and Ms. Director Powers for working so hard on this. I do have a question about the last slide related to the sewer district's presentation.
This slide? Is
yeah,
that this?
yeah.
Okay.
You note here, Mr. Johnson, that these preliminary designs, like for Darst Street, will only be necessary if green is not most effective. Can you explain that?
Sure. So happy to do it, Councilwoman Jensen. So Dar Street was one of those areas when the city and GPSD were looking at this area and said, the city commented that they thought green was going to be particularly helpful in that area just because of the nature of that area. So we may not have to do the capacity improvements within that area due to just the nature of how the city thinks green is going to work in that area. So we made that project contingent to be determined at a later date.
So I just want to make sure, are you saying that we won't have to do that?
Right.
If the
we may
green
not have
solution works everywhere else?
Correct. That, every area is slightly different in terms of how green may or may not work. So Darst just happens to be a pretty massive sewer shed. Probably the largest in the entire CSO area. So that was the one area that was the most expensive to do from a capacity standpoint, increase of capacity. So at the time, that one we pushed way far out and decided to move from upstream to downstream, and then determine Dar Street whether or not that expense would be needed to be incurred, or if green was going to be so effective that we may not have to do that capacity increase at all.
Okay, and so the proposed project, though, for Darst Street is not green. Is that right?
Correct. GPSD's projects are all gray in nature. They're
Okay.
mostly increasing pipes
Okay.
pipe capacity and gate controls to get as much as we can into existing infrastructure.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I just want to thank you, too, for your presentation. I have been reading a lot and watching a lot of this in anticipation, so thank you for the work. I just had one question, just to follow up with Councilmember Allen. I got an email from somebody asking me when the stormwater fee was going to end. I know it was enacted in 2018. At that time, does anybody know, was there an end date, or do we not know?
This is a federal unfunded mandate. Our compliance with both the combined sewer overflow and with the NPDES requirements to manage stormwater inside the city limits is a federal mandate that requires us to spend money towards that. So that's the reason why we have those fees in place. I don't see them ever going away.
The stormwater utility
Correct.
fee. Okay, thank you.
You're going to have stormwater. You're going to have to
Absolutely.
manage to comply with the Clean Water Act from now into perpetuity.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I was going to expound upon the city engineer's response to Councilor Allen, which is somewhat germane to what the manager was just saying, because it's going to come up here in a moment. What you're actually voting on is the approval for the second-year loan, the revolving loan, which is specifically directed toward the combined or the consent decree and us removing or eliminating combined sewers. The stormwater utility has an obligation to that for maintenance when it's after it's built. A certain percentage, I forget the percentage off the top of my head, was it 2%, Mr. Manager? 3%, thank you. So 3% of the stormwater utility fee that will go on into perpetuity will maintain this solution. The rest of that fee is outside of this. So this is wholly being funded, the CSO year 2 and going forward, by this revolving loan that we're taking out through IEPA. So again, they are two separate points, two separate funding sources, but in the end will be maintained by a percentage of the stormwater fee. So I wanted to clear that up with you, Councilor Allen, relative to the fee. That is not germane to this motion tonight, or to this council communication. This is strictly about that loan and the loan amount that will cover these projects. So I just want to make sure we were clear on that point. The other projects you see around the city are being funded out of the stormwater utility fund.
Thank you. Thank you. I know how to respond to that. My second question, you were talking about projects for this coming spring, and you had a slide up showing some of the streets. I just had a question. What will be the nature of some of the work that will take place on streets like Howett, Butler, Howett in particular, because it is a state road? And my question is, if you spend the money to do this work on Howett, and say 2 years from now the state decides to come in and totally redevelop Howett, would that have any impact on the stormwater utility? I'm sorry, on the work that you're going to do this spring on a street like Howett?
We are not doing any of our projects on state roads. We are only doing them on city roads for a couple of reasons. One, we don't have control over them for maintenance and long-term to know what will happen with those roads, but also IDOT won't let us. They consider this to be kind of an experimental type of activity, so they don't know how to approve it. We're still working with them, and we'll continue to work with them so that we can expand their view of the green infrastructure, and the more we install, the more they can see and the more they can get data from. Hopefully that will open up the pathway for us to be able to use those state routes through town. But at this point in time, we are not building anything on state routes.
So could I see that slide again that you had up prior to this one that had some streets listed? So
every street within this area is not necessarily getting a project. This is just the area that projects will happen within year 2. So we can get you a detailed map of every type of installation that will go along these streets, but this is just giving you the general area.
I would like to know what streets that work is going to take place on, because you obviously, well, you've named some residential streets, and there is, just for our purposes, I mean, $7.85 million is a lot, and it would be nice to know so that we could at least keep residents informed who live in and around those areas, so that if there are any traffic detours, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Sear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's very difficult for me to stay silent on this subject here, so I just want to ask a couple questions. Just to maybe Mr. Manager, sorry. Maybe you can jog a memory a little bit. So this commitment that we've made to the EPA, it's 18-year commitment, correct? Because of all the loans that we'll have to make, it'll take at least 37 years total to repay this 18-year project. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so can you tell us again, refresh our memory, what was the commitment we made? How many $1 million did we commit it to?
The combined commitment between the GPSD and the city was over $150 million. I think we had over $126 million was ours, and the remainder was the sanitary district.
So of the $126 million, when you look at material and that's just a capital improvement, basically, right? There's other expenses that will go with $120 million, correct?
Well, the capital expenses are the $126 million, yes. And then, as Director Powers mentioned, the cost of maintaining that and maintaining the infrastructure is the cost that we'll have to carry on, and that'll go on for, as long as we have that green infrastructure in place.
Exactly. Thank you for refreshing our memory. Mr. Johnson, thank you very much for being here. It's been a while since I've seen you. Appreciate you being here. I just got a couple questions. I mean, tell us about the finances a little bit on your side. I mean, I know you have costs, obviously. I know you have money that you have set aside for many years also. The question that I get from our constituent basically is, okay, the fees are going up every year like everything else, correct? How, and then you just mentioned something about $30 million. What is the plan that you have? How will we repay, or our constituent repay, that amount of money, especially for people that really are on fixed income, whether it is the poor or the elderly, and obviously businesses, their costs have gone up substantially the last many years. So can you talk to us a little bit about how we'll be able to repay that $30 million you talked about?
Happy to do it. Thank you, Councilman Sear. So GPSD's being a special purpose district, it's a little bit easier for us to manage our one area really well. So we have, when financing was easy to get and at very low interest rates, we did a large bond issuance to capture the $30 million that was going to be necessary to do this project at that time. And predominantly, we will be paying that back over time, a 20-year bond issuance, again, to capture low interest rates. So fee increases at the district have gone in over time, a little bit different than some communities where you try to hold everything as constant as you can, which gets you in trouble at some point because then you have to have large increases. We've seen that in the area, not necessarily with us, but in the area. So over time, my predecessors have been diligent about modest increases to build up the fund to be able to pay back that. Not only that, but for all of our other projects, this is just one area of our really 3 capital areas that we're dedicated to. CSO, and then our treatment plant, and then all of the other collection system that we have and the pump stations that service the area. So fee increases went in over time with this in mind, knowing this day was going to come. So a lot of our increases have already taken place.
Thank you for the answer, and I'm not sure if you're allowed to discuss this in public, but tell us about your emergency funds And if you have any, I mean, you and all the people that came before you did a tremendous job. I mean, I was very impressed by how you guys manage your money and the reserve that you have. Are you allowed to use these reserves to pay for the $30 million, or are you allowed to talk to us a little bit about that?
We don't need to use those since we're fully funded on this, but we do have a reserve policy in place. Our policy we adopt every year, pretty consistent policy, I would say, hasn't really changed much over time. We've increased numbers in it as the time has gone by. So we set aside, and yes, I am permitted to talk, I mean, it's public. Everything is public and transparent. So we set aside every single year enough funds to pay for 3 months worth of operating expenses, like cash on hand in case you don't receive another dime in. Let's say our billing system goes down and we're unable to send a single bill. We have 3 months cash on hand. We have 1 year's worth of debt and principal and interest payments, particularly important for bond issuance and bond covenants. And then we keep $4 million set aside. In our business, much like city government, everything is extremely expensive. And when you're digging up roads, if you have a pipe burst, $4 million can go very quickly. And or if you have an issue at the treatment plant, we get in 20+ million gallons every day. That's constant flow. So we keep that on hand. We have never, in my history there, 15 years now, have never had to use reserves. But you never know when you're going to need to use that. But we have that on hand.
Thank you very much for your time and for being here. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Rodrigo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just 2 questions, but I'm so glad that Councilmember Jensen kind of walked us back to some of those early dialogues, and I think for a long time the public kept asking, why aren't we signing anything? Why aren't we settling this? And I think that she hit on exactly why we didn't settle right away, because first of all, it would have been a lot more expensive. It would have been the wrong solution. And we would not have also gotten the improvements that we're seeing top of mind. When we see these street improvements, we see them, and a lot of constituents see them as a beautification. They actually have a purpose there. And I like that fact that we've actually kind of gone back to why time and negotiating that. And I know everybody around the council here and previous council spent a lot of time back in executive sessions with these agreements going back and forth. So I think that's important for the public to remember. One question for the city manager is, can you just give us an update? Loans, bonds, obviously very important in this because of the significant amount of money that we've got into it. And one thing that you brought forward a while back was the IEPA loan. And just for the public's information, can you talk about why that is such a significant piece to this on the savings of this as we go forward?
Well, ideally, anytime you're looking at doing long-term debt financing, you want to try and get the lowest interest rates you possibly can. And in this instance, as we started to do the analysis and started looking at it, a long-term loan through the IEPA at an interest rate that is below almost half of what we would get if we were to issue bonds made the most sense for us. And so as we started to look at that, our project met the requirements for the IEPA's revolving loan fund. They have money, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, has money that they get from the federal government to loan out for water and wastewater programs and communities. And we fit the criteria because of what we're trying to do to address the consent decree and to address this federal mandate we have to fix our CSOs. So instead of paying 4% interest if we were out issuing bonds, we're paying almost, I think it's 1.5%. So our interest costs are more than half less of what or 50% less than what they would have been if we had gone out and just issued debt on the street. So it made sense for us to do that. We've got the preliminary approval for year 2. That's coming up on the agenda here, and we're pretty excited that we're going to continue to be able to finance this at the lowest possible rate for the taxpayer.
And for the public's clarification, that is also something that, as opposed to getting one big loan for the whole project, that one is a staggered loan process, correct?
That is correct.
But we see significant savings in the interest rate.
That is correct.
Great. story. And my next question is, I think, again, just for the public as well, and it can go to the city manager or for our public works director, maybe public works director. You know, we see these great improvements that go in, and they're beautiful. But they do require some maintenance that I think that we kind of forget about a lot of times when we see them for the first time. Pavers have to be cleaned. You have to make sure that they take the water they're supposed to, or we can get to the end of this time period with the EPA and it's not taking in the water that it does. Can you speak just a little bit about the maintenance that we would need, the planting and the cleaning of these pavers and the upkeep that we would need to do so that people know where that fee is going to be going?
Absolutely. Yes, it does. And by the way, Mr. Manager, it's 1.24%. So actually lower than 1.5, so really favorable interest rate. That is, in some cases, and again, that is why the 3% is going toward that, because of some of the special materials that it requires to become permeable so that water will flow through it. So we have to keep them clear. So there is a frequency of cleaning, maintaining them, replacing them, even in some cases, depending on the type of material we put down on the street, even using special plow blades for plowing snow. So it's not just about maintaining, it's also the operations, just the day-to-day operations. Some of the plantings that take place along the bump outs and some of the materials that we use for green infrastructure will require actual plantings or replantings and the maintenance of the vegetation that we put in those areas. So that's the specialty type work that's outside of the norm of what you would see in a public works operations area on streets, curbs, sidewalks, and so on. It's primarily where it's taking water, taking on its ability to continue to take water and take that water over time, long beyond the 18 years.
Thank you very much. And Madam Mayor, if there's no other questions from any of my colleagues, I would go ahead and make a motion to approve 23-026, number A, or letter A.
Item A? Yes. Item A, seconded by Councilmember Sear. Very good discussion, and I think that we were all more educated about this process and the projects and the work that's being done. It took a long time to get to where we are today, and it really keeps getting better and better. I want to thank you, Director Powers, Deputy Director Klopfenstein, and Mr. Brian Johnson for your work. Good work. We have a motion to approve item A. We're going to take one at a time. Looks like there's no more discussion. Please cast your ballots. Item A passes unanimously. Councilman Ruckriegel?
To approve 23-026, item B.
Seconded by Councilmember Sear. Any discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And to bring this home tonight, 23-026, letter C, I would move for approval.
Seconded by Councilmember Sear. Any discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
23-027 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to approve a contract with Green Demolition Contractors, Inc. for the Harrison School Demolition Project.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you. Maybe if I could ask Director Doolin to come to the podium and just explain this item.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I think after another attempt, we are ready to move forward with the demolition of Harrison School. The previous approval, we were not able to come to a contract with the approved bidder due to them not being able to meet the standards of the city standards for bidding, and they were not able to meet some of the federal requirements with the money Congressman Bustos got us through the earmark process. So with this, we ask that you approve the contract with Green Demolition. They are the ones who are doing McKinley. We have talked to them. They have the scope to do both projects. They indicated that it shouldn't delay the timeline. It actually will help them with some business processes by being able to go from environmental abatement to one to the other while they're staging it. So it shouldn't affect the timeline.
Okay. Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to go ahead and move that item number 23-027 be approved.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Velpula. Discussion, Councilmember Euler?
I'm good.
Okay, none, okay. Any discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously.
3-028 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to adopt an ordinance to acknowledge and accept changes to the proposed redevelopment plan, projects, and area for the proposed Medina Plains Allen Road Business Park Tax Increment Financing District.
Councilmember Seer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to approve this ordinance, please.
Seconded by Councilmember Allen. Discussion? Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, I'm looking at the map. I'm looking at the map, and just for information, things I don't understand. We have an umbilical that's running up Knoxville Avenue, not connecting to anything north, and I'm wondering what that's about. And while we're at it, on the west side, just below Route 6, we've got apparently a little umbilical of something else sneaking in there between two parcels. Could you let us know what those are about, please?
I certainly can. If you look at the Medina Plains map, the parcel on the far eastern edge is actually the Rock Island Trail. And that's a public piece of property that we own, that we included in the TIF. So if there's any public improvements to be able to be made to that portion of the trail, that's included in there. So that's not actually Knoxville, that's the Rock Island Trail. Just so you get your bearings, on Pioneer Parkway, the far southeast corner of this map is where the trail crosses, where the railroad tracks cross Pioneer Parkway. So that's the trail connection kind of across the street from Barracks Cater Inn. The piece that looks like a tail on the far western portion of the TIF is property the city has owned for many years. It's part of the property that was part of the Central Illinois Rail Yard. It is the railroad that comes into Pioneer Park. It's the portion that connects off of the Union Pacific line and goes both north and south. So that provides that access into and out of Pioneer Park, Industrial Park, for rail access into this area. And the council just previously annexed that land. Even though we've owned it for 30 years, we've finally annexed it into the city. And that property it's not paying any taxes because it's railroad land, but it is now in the city, and that's part of this TIF district as well.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Matt.
And just for clarification, as Mr. Klein mentioned earlier, there were 4 parcels that we included in some that was south of the intersection of Allen Road and Pioneer Parkway that was included in the original map. This new map takes it all out and is just what is in the city of Peoria. So at our next council meeting on the 14th, this is what you will be approving as the final boundaries of the TIF if you approve this item this evening.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
Yes. Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manager, while we have the map out in front of us, if you could just kind of highlight the accepted areas that are highlighted as not being part of the proposed TIF boundaries. I think we all recognize the Walmart store area there, but the others, are there some specific reasons?
So along Pioneer Parkway, you have some improved properties that are mostly car dealerships that have been improved along the northern section of Pioneer Parkway. Moving up, you have the existing property for Maui Gym and their corporate headquarters. Across the street, you would have the property that includes what used to be PV2, the restaurant that's there. And then moving further north, you would have the Walmart property and the outlots that are included in that. So those are the accepted properties that are not as part of the TIF district.
Thank you.
Good enough? Okay. Any other discussion? Please cast your ballots. Passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
23-029 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to concur with the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff for the following. A, to adopt an ordinance rezoning property from Class R4 Single Family Residential District to a Class R8 Multifamily Residential District for the property located at 939, 943, 951, and 957 South Shelley Street, Peoria, Illinois. B, adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class R4 Single Family Residential District for townhomes for the property located at 920, 926, 934, and 938 South Shelley Street, Peoria, Illinois. C, adopt an ordinance rezoning property from Class R4 Single Family Residential District to a Class R8 Multifamily Residential District for the property located at 948, 952, and 956 South Shelley Street and 1503 and 1507 West Antoinette Street, Peoria, Illinois. D, adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class R4 Single Family Residential District for townhomes for the property located at 921, 925, 927, 929, and 933 South Summer Avenue in Peoria, Illinois. And E, adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class R4 Single Family Residential District for townhomes for the property located at 1508 and 1512 West Antoinette Street, Peoria, Illinois. And we will need separate motions on all.
Okay. Mr. Manager.
Once again, I'd like to turn over the floor to Director Doolin to bring some folks forward to just talk about the proposed projects that we have here.
Director?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Council. I wanted to provide a little bit of historical context about how these projects came to fruition and how we got here. Back in 2013, the South Village TIF was created as a way to spur some development in 61605. At the time, the assessed value for the entire South Village TIF was $49 million. The MacArthur plan, which one of these properties is off of MacArthur, and then there's another project later in the agenda that's right on MacArthur, was further adopted in 2019 that talked about development in this area. Coinciding with both of those items, we formed the land bank in 2021 with specific objectives saying assemble contiguous vacant lots to support affordable housing in the city of Peoria, specifically focusing on MacArthur and 61605. And then the last thing, in March of 2022, the city of Peoria adopted the Southside Revitalization Plan. As part of that planning efforts, there was over 30 planning meetings, 4 in-person key stakeholder meetings, and 70 community members. That plan went to the Planning and Zoning Commission, where it had some more public outreach, and then it came to council for approval and was adopted as part of the city's consolidated plan. Specifically within that, 149 residents were surveyed to get feedback for the plan that was adopted by council. Specifically within that plan, some goals and recommendations included: update the quality of housing by increasing the percentage of new construction with particular focus on the redevelopment of properties owned by the public entities, increase access to stable housing for residents through long-term leasing and a focus on home ownership, ensure that older adults living in the community have housing needs met, and pursue adequate housing modification programs and new developments to ensure that older residents can remain in the community. So I think sometimes, the city gets criticized for having plans and not trying to work towards them. And I wanted to highlight how we kind of got here with these projects. One of the things with all the plans, it specifically talked about the need for public investment in 61605. I think Public Works just illustrated a significant amount of investment that they're doing in 61605, but I wanted to highlight some other investment that's occurred within the last few years or will occur in the future. Western Avenue for $14 million was redone. Fire station for $3 million on Western. The MacArthur Corridor, the actual street, will get a $10 million grant. We received $7 million from the state to see some major infrastructure improvements over the next 2 years. $3 million towards Harrison and McKinley demolition. We, over the next, last year and the next 2 years with our American Rescue Plan money, will spend about $2.5 million in residential abandoned vacant homes in 61605. And we invested about $600,000 in Treewind Park. And because of the congressional earmark we received, we'll have about $2 million in sidewalk improvements in 61605 as well. So all of the plans highlighted a specific need for public investment in this area in hopes of spurring additional development. I think, one of the things that really speak to the need of all of these projects. So I mentioned that in 2013 when the South Village TIF was adopted, the total assessed value of all the property in the South Village TIF was $49 million. In 2021, it had decreased to $41 million. There's been, with the exception of one building, which is the Dollar General on Western, the TIF has not seen any new construction since it was adopted in 2013. Furthermore, the city has unfortunately, I think, because of the need, helped in decreasing some of that assessed value. In the last 10 years, we've demolished over 400 residential structures in 61605. And in that same time frame, we've added 0 new housing units. So I think it speaks to the need to add additional housing units going forward. From the 2000 to 2020 census, the area saw about a 21% decline. I think then in the Southside Revitalization Plan, it also talks about housing someone who's cost burdened for their housing, which means they're spending more than 35% of their income specifically for housing. It's in Census Tract 5, which is the northern part of 61605, and the northern part of the South Village TIF, and then Census Tract 50 is below it. Census Tract 5 is 76% housing burden with the cost of housing, and Census 50 is about 64% cost burden for their housing. So I think it speaks to the need for affordable housing specifically in that area. The last thing I want to point out is with the census data, we're also able to look at the age of structures being built. The city on average has about 25.6% houses that were built before 1950 as a city as an average. Specifically in 61605, it's about 50.2% of the houses were built before 1950. So I think it speaks of the older housing stock as well. So with all these plans in place, we really have worked to put together contiguous vacant lots, as the land bank objective stated, to really attract affordable housing developers to really address the need for housing that we hear in the community. We reached out to some of the senior housing that currently exist in the area. 3 of the 4 had an over 6-month waiting list for residents to live at the properties. So that's kind of addresses the need and how we got here. I kind of wish, Councilman Riggenbach asked for some information back on affordable housing, and I wish we had the timing was better so we could have talked to that information. But I think as a city staff and council, we need to continue to work to kind of break the stigma of affordable housing being a detriment to a community. Affordable housing simply means that housing is affordable. It doesn't define who someone is or what they're going to do. Specifically 80% of area median income, which usually is what qualifies you for these programs. For a household size of 1, that's $47,000, and for a household size of 4, that's $68,000. And I think that's what, that's, a better term is workforce housing. It's people who might be living paycheck to paycheck and having that stabilized income in place that doesn't go up, because the landlord raises the rent, I think is important for our community. So with all of that said, we were reached out by Peoria Opportunities Foundation, who had a partner Pivotal Housing about some potential projects in the city of Peoria. We talked about it at a few different sites that were ready and not ready, and we eventually landed on these two for now. A little context for they will be applying in February for the Illinois Housing Tax Credits through the IDA program. Specifically for those tax credit programs, you have to have the zoning approval in place, and that's specifically what these cases are in front of you. They, unfortunately, the way the process works, that doesn't mean these are a guarantee. They still have to go through a competitive process statewide. We feel, based on the location, the need, the work we've done previously, the public infrastructure we are making, they score really well, and we're hopeful that they can contribute to adding some development and some assessed value to our community. These two projects alone will equate to about a 10% increase assessed value in the South Village TIF going forward, which means additional TIF increment being generated and additional future projects being made. So with that, Mayor, I'd ask permission to hand it over to Jane Genzel with Peoria Opportunities Foundation, who will talk a little bit about the project, and then I'm happy to answer questions afterwards as well.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Genzel?
My name is Jane Genzel. I'm the director of Peoria Opportunities Foundation here in Peoria, and we're an affordable housing developer. In August, I was contacted by the lawyer in Chicago that we work with, and he connected me to Pivotal and to Willis Mann. And I trust the lawyers that we work with in Chicago all they do is affordable housing. And just as an example, in the last project that we did, because of all of the challenges with that project, they donated $200,000 in legal fees to that project. So it's somebody that I trust and respect. And when they connected us to Pivotal, and then I met Willis, I was like, this is a good partner for Peoria. So I'd like to let Willis take over and give you the overview of the project.
Thank you. Mr. Mann? Greetings.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Thanks for having us. I'm going to try and fit this into 4 minutes, so I won't repeat a lot of what's said. But I do want to underscore that we came to the city in this very building. I had one of the best first meetings I have ever had with the city staff. And I also knew that this was a great fit, not just for Pivotal, but for the kinds of projects we're proposing. As Mr. Dula mentioned, we've tried to align these projects as best we can with the plans that exist. The hard work that's been done by the city, the nonprofit organizations, and the residents here in town. And we wanted to honor that. We aren't able to deliver on absolutely every goal in the plans that have been made, because there are a lot of ambitious goals out there, but we hit on 3 for the what we call the South Village or the MacArthur Corridor Plan, and we also hit 3 goals from the Near South Side Plan. To update the quality of housing, to increase the access to stable housing, and to ensure, in the case of the senior building, to ensure that older adults have a chance to continue to live in the community and have the right kind of housing as they age in place. I always like to talk about the location and context when I'm talking about it. Obviously, you guys know the city of Peoria well, but I show this map for a reason. This shows the city and county-owned parcels. We looked at arguably all of these to come to these final 2 that we're presenting here for you today. And you can see we had a lot of choices. So we spent a lot of time evaluating the options, and the projects here today represent the end of a long road of work. The first one, Churchview Garden Homes, is a scattered site project. It is a tight-knit set of housing units, mix of townhomes and 2-story buildings, which I'll show a rendering of in just a bit. The site is very tight. It is still called a scattered site for the purposes of our IDA funding. But in this case, we're very close in there. We're able to share amenities, make the management office, the community areas, and the playground accessible to everyone. You'll also note on this site, we're really excited to be so close to the St. Anne's Garden of Hope. That, in some ways, is a community amenity that our residents can take advantage of by the nature of being so close. It was one of the first things that attracted me, so it has sort of a special place in my heart because I'm an urban gardener as well. And so you can see this rendering shows both the two-story product in the front and then farther down the road, the townhomes. We're hoping to fill in almost all of the vacant lots on those blocks there, and I think that will have a catalytic impact on the neighborhood. As you may or may not know, there are not a lot of blocks that have 100% contiguous development from one end to the other. And I think this will be a place where we can jump off and start that kind of development in the South Village. So a lot of community benefits that are obvious from housing, but I did want to point out that we'll be creating construction jobs as well as the increased assessed value that Joe talked about. We'll also have 2 permanent jobs per project. That's a property manager and a service tech, making sure that those are kept up to our standards. They'll be on site 5 days a week from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then I also wanted to highlight that we're building green. These will be state-of-the-art energy efficient buildings. In addition to much of the rental housing stock in the South Village being somewhat outdated and perhaps in need of some deferred maintenance, very little of it is energy efficient. So this gives a chance for residents not only to save money on their rent, but also on the bills, on their cost of living. And I just barely made it to my questions slide before the timer ran out. So I'm sure you have some.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Director, did you have anything before we go to council discussion? Okay. And I do have some comments to make, but I certainly want to defer first to Councilmember Jackson and then anyone else on the council that wants to comment. Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions before I go to my comments. Mr. Mann, I think in the meeting we had with you in December, you talked about the fact that you are not just the kind of a developer that puts up a project, then disappears. Will there be a continued presence by Pivotal Partners? We've seen projects go up and developers leave, and 10 years down the line, the properties just declined terribly. Are we going to see something like that with a project like this?
You will not. Pivotal Housing Partners is a long-term owner. We have developed a portfolio of almost 16,000 units in 17 states. We've only sold 2 buildings in our 29-year now history. There is one that we're contemplating selling right now that might be a third. But that gives you an idea. That's about 120 units out of 17 or 16,000 that we've developed. So we are long-term owners, always have been and plan to continue to be. Additionally, I think one of the strongest evidence for our long-term plans for Peoria are the fact that we are already working on a next round of projects and really hope that this is only the beginning of a long relationship. We're also working, we have a project in Morton that we've owned for 6 years and intend to own for the rest of as far as we can see into the future. And we're working on developing a project in Pekin. So our commitment is not just to the city of Peoria, but to the area.
You talk a lot about seniors. Many of these areas you referred to they're just vacant lots, and lighting is a serious issue because where there were once homes, we now have lots of vacant lots, and during the night, it is extremely dark and unsafe in many instances, and some of these areas are bound by alleys. And as a result, consequently, residents on the south side, particularly 61605, are still prone to a lot of illegal dumping that goes on throughout our community. We have cleanup after cleanup after cleanup, but these same people come back and dump garbage in our community, usually at night in areas like where there are alleys, where there's no lighting, and it's just an easy target. With this new project, how are we going to deal with that issue? because I've been involved with summer litter patrol programs. I've walked around with young people. I know where these hot spots are. Many of them are in some of the same areas you've referred to. And I don't feel comfortable moving forward with new projects if we don't address our lighting issues and our illegal dumping that goes on in and around our community. So I would be really concerned about putting older people in these areas when we've got safety issues and things of that nature. Could you talk a little bit about how you're going to address those concerns?
Of course. I think there's two components that play into it. Obviously, we'll have site lighting, and we have a photometric engineer who knows all about sort of light fixtures and light candles and all of that stuff, and they can work with us to make sure that we light both the areas inside our property lines and adjacent to without bothering any of the neighbors. At this stage, they have the technology, the cutoff blinds for the lights to make sure that we can work with staff to light the areas that we want lit without creating light pollution in the neighborhood. So in all honesty, I don't know how to do that, but I know how to hire someone who does know how to do that. And I know we've discussed some of your needs. I think we'll be able to bring light to the alley without impinging on any of the neighbors. The other thing that we'll be bringing is exterior security cameras that I think will address some of your concerns. We will have eyes on the parking lot and exterior cameras facing out from the building 360 degrees. We can, again, work with staff to make sure that we have coverage on the alleys and those kinds of things so that we can see perpetrators in real time and potentially help with prosecutions for any illegal dumping. We find that the cameras are absolutely crucial for not just providing security, but also making sure that from a management standpoint, we can identify any bad actors within the building.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Madam Mayor, just had a few comments. When Jane Genzel called me months ago, I was initially not in support of a project like this, but after thinking about everything that's transpired over the last 40 to 50 years on our 61605 neighborhood, this process of disinvestment has taken a long time. And I've come to the realization that while we've lost almost 4,000 residents, and we have people who, yes, obviously we need housing for some of our older citizens. We also want home ownership to become, once again, a part of our community. With that in mind, I realize that we may not always get those things in the order that we would like them, but I do understand that, we've got to, when there's an opportunity like this with a private developer, as hard as it is sometimes to get that type of funding, we have to take advantage of it. And this is just, in my mind, a piece of the puzzle that we are involved with in terms of, bringing all those critical components back to our community as we seek to stop the exodus and increase our population base in 61605. So, Mr. Mann, I appreciate your interest in our community. I do support your project. And with that, Madam Mayor, I will support this with the thought in mind that this is just part of what our long-term plan is to revitalize our community in 61605. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions that the council has for Mr. Mann or Ms. Genzel? Mr. Mann, can you come back up? I want to just give a little bit of history, taking the Chuck Graham approach here, Councilman. So I grew up in south side of Peoria, 61605, and when my family came here in the 60s, there were 33,000 people that lived in that area. In the 50s, there were something like 45,000, 50,000 people, and it started to decline over time. But in the 70s, it started to decline, and there were, I think, in the 20,000. Today, there's less than 14,000 people that live in 61605, the south side of Peoria. So that 4,000 plus people that Councilwoman Jackson was speaking of was just in the last 10 years. There's continual exodus to north. People are moving to northern parts of the city. And with that loss of population, we've seen grocery stores. It's a desert, a grocery desert, food desert. We've seen schools consolidate. We've seen businesses and pharmacies leave. So we've seen, retail leave along with the population because it takes a population in order to support commercial and business industries, right? There have been people that have wanted to move back to the south side of Peoria, but they couldn't find enough quality, affordable housing. I know that. I've heard it over and over. Again, I also know that 50% of the homes on the south side have not been maintained. So you've heard all the data, right? You've seen the negative data associated with this area, which is still, my mother still lives in this area, right? It's still got a good number of homeowners, not enough. There's still people that choose to live on the south side. There's people that have moved to other parts of the city that want to move back to the south side. I'm wondering, there seem to be risky factors here. What drives you and your company to want to invest in an area like this, and have you done it before successfully?
We have. We've done quite a bit of it. And in fact, our mission, in some ways, is on our name. We like to be a pivotal part of the change in a community. There's a lot of real estate developers that want to ride the wave as it grows, right? We want to be the developer that helps start the wave. We know how hard that is. It takes the subsidies, it takes the unique types of funding that we go after, that we have developed a niche, a special set of skills to be able to secure that funding and deliver these projects in a unique, heavily regulated environment. But those are the kind of projects that can be catalytic in a neighborhood like the south side of Peoria. And we've done it before. We've done it in Archer Heights on the south side of Chicago. I would argue that we've done it in Morton to a certain extent by preserving a nursing home that had been derelict and left behind in the crash of the financial crash in 2008. And we've done it several times in Iowa. In Muscatine, just now, we finished 2 projects, much like Peoria, where we worked one multifamily and one senior project to really deliver much needed units in a town that hadn't seen new construction in over 4 years, any type of new construction in over 4 years. So we really like to be part of that. We like to work with municipalities to find the places where we can really make a difference. It leads to great projects, it leads to great relationships with the municipalities, and it leads to great residents. So we hope that this will be another example of that kind of catalytic change.
Well, I applaud your interest in wanting to develop in this area. We don't have developers lined up yet, but you're the experts. And I know Ms. Genzel and her work, the work that she's been doing for many years in the East Bluff primarily of Peoria, just beautiful housing homes for families in this area. And so, it just brings me a lot of confidence that you're involved, you're local. Jane, we love you. You do good work. The fact that you're the experts and you're very passionate and interested in developing this area gives me a lot of confidence. I think it can be a game changer, a transformative opportunity, a life-changing opportunity for a part of our city that has great need for quality, affordable housing. So I just want to say thank you.
I'm glad we have the opportunity.
Any other questions or comments? Did you have a motion to make, Councilmember Jackson?
Yes, I would like to make a motion. Should I do it before the discussion?
It's item A.
Yeah, okay. Madam Mayor, I would like to make a motion that item number 23029 A be adopted.
Seconded by Councilmember Riggenbach. Discussion? Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I would like to criticize Director Doolin for saying that things that were developed before 1950 are inferior. I take that personally. Madam Mayor, I am not in favor of this development. And there are several reasons. Number one, very much like in the North Valley, when things like this were being bubbled around, the homeowners there did not want it. I attended a meeting on the south side with homeowners and renters, and they were, many of them, not all of them, many of them were very much opposed, especially the homeowners. They did not want to have subsidized housing in their neighborhood. Some of them said things like, we don't want a Taft Homes in the middle of our neighborhood. Now, these brand new structures with subsidized rents will be filled as soon as they are built because they're going to be all new, all shiny, etc. We have over 100 units, and which says to me that we will have around 100 more abandoned homes in our city that we'll have to deal with. This is like if you're driving a little Fiat and somebody says to you, well, you can have a Cadillac. You know, the demand for Cadillacs would go through the roof. You know, nobody would want to be in the Fiat anymore. So the fact that these places fill up, etc., is obvious. But what do these neighborhoods need? The people who live in these neighborhoods now and who own in these neighborhoods now need help. And we're going to help through IDA's programs, and there are other programs from HUD and whatnot. We're going to help those investors. I have nothing against out-of-town investors, not at all. But what about the people who are there? We tend to have lots of money for things like this and not very much money for down payment assistance, for rehab assistance. Those are all secondary. There's no sex appeal to them or something. The legislatures don't seem to care. The feds don't care. The things we're doing and proposing here, we've been doing now for 60, 80 years, and it hasn't improved neighborhoods. It has, with other things, harmed neighborhoods. And this is a public policy problem. I don't blame this on the people. The people are totally capable. I don't recall, this is a little before my time, Director Doolin, but with the GI Bill after World War II, all these GIs could get a mortgage. Then they changed it at the last moment, only for new construction. It was very harmful to cities. They finally, in the mid-'70s, changed that back. I think most of these problems are public policy problems, but let's not compound what we've been doing that hasn't worked with something new and shiny again. I just don't think these things will work. We need to invest in the people who are there. We need to increase home ownership. That's what these people want, more home ownership, not more rental. And if we look at all these programs that are designed in Washington and designed in Springfield and whatnot, over a long period of time, they've failed. They've failed. And our cities are deteriorating. We need to change course. And so I will, and I don't, by the way, I do not question the character or of any of the folks who are proposing this. I think everybody wants real progress in housing. I just think it's been proven that this kind of thing does not work. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilman, I beg to differ with you. You know, I served on the Illinois Housing Development Authority for a while before I was removed because I was elected to this role, but I saw these types of developments all over the state of Illinois. Heavy investments in housing, quality housing for seniors, for families, multifamily, new housing developments. We have homeowner down payment assistance programs right now that's happening in that area. We have projects that provide resources that provide for roofing, repairing roofs. There's programs that provide doors and windows. I think we need more of it, like the East Village TIF provides. But this is a $25 million investment in an area that has not had significant investment in housing in a long time. I think that Director Doolin talked about no activity with a TIF since 2013 or so. Hardly no opportunity. But I think that you have to look at what is working, and I know these types of developments are working all over the state, all over the country, and it's an opportunity that, for me, it's a no-brainer. It's time to support the families that want to live in this area. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I enthusiastically support this project. I've had the opportunity to work closely with Peoria Opportunities and Jane Genzel for the last probably 10 years with various projects in the East Bluff. And if there's something that this woman and this organization is passionate about, it's providing more opportunities of affordable housing for our citizens. You look at the situation we're just coming out of, we're still in for some people, and I see one of the residents of a Darwin home in the gallery tonight. If we don't approve more affordable housing opportunities, which is one of the few things we can control, I think it's literally a slap in the face to those people who have been asked to vacate their residences. You know, you talk about what do the people want, and this isn't my council district, this is my city though, but as Councilwoman Jackson said, there's been a number of studies going back to the South Village TIF, to the I can't even think of all the names of them now. I'm so excited about it. But I mean, there's been opportunities and opportunities for public input for the last, going back to 2013, I believe was the first date that Director Doolin mentioned. So it's so nice to see something happening and not just asking for another study. I think when we look at the number of residential demolitions that have taken place, we see that there is a dearth of housing opportunities on the south side. when you look at I'll say this again respectfully, Councilman Kelly, the number of houses built before 1950, I mean, that percentage is disproportionate for the houses on the south side. So looking at a couple of the various reports we had and studies that we've done, we heard loud and clear from the residents of the south side to increase access to stable housing, update the quality of housing, and these two projects will clearly do that. So I could go on and on. You're probably tired of hearing me pontificate, but I really think that this is so critical for us that we don't pass up the opportunity. And, you know, this isn't a done deal even with our approval tonight. This has to go through the IDA vetting process. So this is just us giving it our full support so that they can go for that funding. And I would just encourage my colleagues to be supportive of this and be supportive of the residents of the First District. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you for your comments about the South Side, how important it is, and why it's important that we reinvest time, energy, and money.
Yes.
And with that, also investing of a vision that actually can be what we all, the residents of the South Side, what Peoria wants it to be. And a couple of thoughts that hit here tonight, and I wasn't going to say anything, but you know, we talk about affordable housing. Affordable housing is, I think we need to remove that word from our vocabulary. It really is workforce housing. And housing costs, we see the media every single day tell us it's rising, and you can't keep up. And we need to be able to provide another option in there. But what's interesting is I don't know of a project, because I know there isn't one, that Jane Genzel doesn't touch that isn't quality. And not only do we talk about affordable housing, but we talk about affordable quality housing. And it's about choices, being able to give residents choices of where they would like to live, options. When we talk about seniors, many houses, and I had a senior call me this afternoon who's living in their house because they don't want to leave the South Side, but they don't have an option. It's not the right house for them. And they want to stay where they want to stay, but they don't have an option. We're creating an option. And I think Councilmember Jackson's words that she started with were extremely important, because this is a plan that was vetted. She was very clear. She wasn't necessarily in support of it in the beginning. And through reflection, through being able to look at the fact that this is not the project. This is a project that, in the multitudes of other things that we have done recently and that we hope to do in the future, is going to help be a building block. And I think that those comments that Councilmember Jackson said and how she came to this are extremely important, because this, I don't think, it's not like a plan was set down here and boom, let's take it. This thing was vetted through. And the other part that's kind of lost in some of the discussion is we talked a lot when the land bank was put in about what it could do. And something that was mentioned, and I forget who mentioned it, was we want to be able to see results. This is the first project coming out of the land bank. When people say you don't want, you're not investing in, we've invented time, energy, money, and we've got some more to come, and there's going to be a lot more projects. I have no fear that this is only one of a multitude of projects that can come there, because it's about building a vision. When we talk about lighting, it's going to have lighting. I love that question, because this is going to be a lit spot. Maybe this becomes the way that we end up investing other city dollars to be able to light the areas. Cameras, and I think those are all valid questions, and they help make why this project here will be successful. quality housing. Everybody deserves it. Everybody should have it. It should be around the area within our whole city. And then let's build our home ownership programs around this as well, and the home reinvestments.
Yes.
The city, we've got some great tools. Let's put them all into the bucket. So thank you for letting me talk. I know it's a lot of comments in a lot of different ways, but this project and the one that we're going to be talking about after this, I think are important for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try not to be redundant, but I appreciate Councilman Ruckrigel's comments. I'm very supportive of this. As a member of the Land Bank, I mean, this has been our mission, and one of our primary goals was to put together parcels of land that are vacant, where some of these buildings were that have been demolished, of them all, in together, and we bought up some properties too that the county owned so that we could make development happen, so we can build affordable housing and then other housing and businesses. And as Councilman Ruckriegel pointed out, this is the first one to come to us, and we've only had the land bank really for about a year. So, I mean, this is just the first step in it, and it's really important to see this through. I'm very excited about it. I think, it does a number of things. It provides affordable housing, which we have seen study after study. I think we had a policy session on it a number of years ago, and we had a notebook this big. And I don't know what the numbers are anymore, but that's a huge need in the city of Peoria. And this will address some of that, and that's very important. And again, as the mayor pointed out, we're going to be investing $25 million in an area that has seen no investment in a number of years, except for, I think, Director Doolin mentioned the building of the dollar store, and that's the only thing that's been built on the south side in the last 10 years. So I'm very supportive of it. I am glad to see that Jane Genzel is a part of this. She's been very successful on the East Bluff, and I look forward to hopefully partnering with Pivotal on this project and others in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm also in support of this project. I think it's important as we look to raise the economic floor of the 61605, we address those basic needs, and part of that is affordable housing. I love the comment made about how these homes will be energy efficient. With rising Ameren costs and things of that nature, being a homeowner right now is very challenging. As someone who just got my Ameren bill last week. But no, in all seriousness though, when you think of the cost of replacing your furnace, replacing your water heater, replacing some of those other amenities that are very expensive, and we have a very old housing stock in the 61605. Many of the homes, although yeah, you could be a homeowner, but it's very expensive to upkeep that home. And so we can provide quality housing in an area that needs investment. And then also, too, when I think of the future, I think of the children that are going to have a great place to live, a place that will be safe and will improve their quality of life, and we're preparing the next leaders of this city. So I will definitely be supporting this. Thank you.
Councilmember Graham?
Yes, just a couple of questions. First of all, does the occupant of this development, once it's built out, do they pay rent only at a lower scale because it's affordable, quote unquote?
Things there. One is, everybody always pays rent, and oftentimes a person's rent, if they have a voucher, then they pay a third of their, a third of their income, because that's the standard, the HUD standard of what people should be paying for housing. And then, that's part of the thing with the tax credit process, is that because you have the funding, you have a lower mortgage on the property, and therefore you can charge lower rents, more affordable rents.
So they will be paying rent,
yes.
But it will be probably not at the market level.
That's right. It's not $1,200.
Now, do you prefer that we refer to this as the MacArthur Flats project?
Oh,
This one is
Churchview Gardens.
Churchview Gardens.
Right, but the name could still change. They're both working names for right now. Yeah,
MacArthur and Churchview?
they're in Churchview, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And I just want to get clarity on something. As I looked at A, B, C, D, and E, these are ordinances we're being asked to adopt to rezone. A requires 8 votes since we have 11 people voting. C requires 8 votes. Now, the ones that are adopting a special use, and I don't believe we're going to have any problem with the votes, but how many are we talking about their corporation council? This is for you.
So you're correct. The rezoning is a 8-vote requirement, 2/3
Yes.
vote, which is 8, given the members that are present here.
Some of these call for rezoning, but we have here for B, we're asked to approve a special use. For D, we're asked to approve a special use. For E, we're asked to approve a special use. What's the difference between that and the other two, which involves rezoning?
You're changing your zoning map by rezoning, and so there's a special requirement there. Whereas the special uses, when you passed your ordinances, you've essentially said if they meet certain criteria, they're appropriate for that area. So you're changing in a rezoning what's appropriate for that area.
Okay.
As opposed to a special use just granting it on condition.
So are we going to require, out of 11 here tonight, are we going to require 8 for A, B, C, D, and E?
No, 8 for A and C, excuse me. And then for B, D, and E, those are just simple majority of the corporate authorities, which is 6.
Thank you. And, occasionally somebody has to enact the role of mechanic. However, Mayor, thank you for putting a historic frame on this whole project and what's been happening to our city. And I think for that reason and many others articulated by my council peers, this is a good project, and I'll be voting in the affirmative. Thank you, Councilor Jackson, for your vision on this.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Velpula?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First off, I started hating the word affordable housing. So the reason is that the moment you speak about affordable housing, as Director Doolin mentioned and Councilman Rockrigal mentioned, there is a negative stereotype that there's a stigma that is surrounding that. It is something to do with poverty, something to do with marginalization of residents and increased crime rate. But then we are actually speaking the same narrative again and again, and if we are trying to impart the people that this is something called an affordable housing. I don't know why you call it as an affordable housing, because I would like to coin as workforce housing. That's one way to look at it. The thing that I'm really wanted to press here is that what we speak here is what is resonated outside. So the more we speak about this affordable housing, most of the common people think that, this is something to do with, I would say, low-income housing. We want to bring more people into that. But in reality, we are trying to help people to get an affordable lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And having a proper house is pretty important for a normal person, and we are, as a city, you are providing that. Why not you change the narrative to say this is not something to do with low income and totally ban that, saying it's not an affordable, but it's a workforce house. I mean, there are several theories that float around, but I like to see this as a progressive approach, which probably will bring more people, more residents to that area, and then see it as, and especially when I spoke with Director Doolin yesterday, it says majority of the workforce would like to embrace that. So that really helps tell a story in a very positive way. I support this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I know there's issues with the terminology, the stigma associated with the word term affordable. Yet some people understand it as housing that I can afford. It's hard to completely get away from it. Some people don't understand workforce housing, what that means. It's very complex, but I think that we have to get away from thinking that affordable housing is always low-income housing, or that affordable housing means the projects of the 50s and the 60s, because it doesn't. It doesn't.
But then we don't address the stigma surrounding that regardless. And even in this council, we speak about the same thing over and over and over. So how do you get over that and come up with a term that is not appealing, but it is real,
Right.
which solves the purpose?
Yeah. It's challenging because even the funding that's offered through the state, through the IDA, is still referred to as affordable housing. And so it's a challenge. And I think we all try to get around it, but it keeps coming back to that word affordable too. So I think we just have to keep working on it. Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had a couple of quick comments. I wanted to remind my colleague, Councilmember Kelly, this is just a part of the puzzle. We have not abandoned our commitment to make home ownership, build new homes once again on the south side a priority. Our challenge, our needs are so dire. We've got infrastructure needs that have to be addressed. And I think until we are able to begin the process of addressing some serious infrastructure needs, then it will be challenging. But this is just a small part of the process. I believe the mayor's committed to it. I know I am. And this is just a small piece of the puzzle. And I might mention that since I've been on the land bank, it's been about a year and a half. I've got an article coming out, but 2021 to 2022, I think my number was for my article 126 demolitions. Out of those, 98 were from the 1st District, and I think the vast majority were on the south side.
Sure.
So many of those homes down there, Councilmember Kelly, are beyond rehabbing. You're talking spending $70,000 and $80,000 and $90,000. So you're better off building brand new structures, which is what I would like to see done. So that sort of puts everything in perspective. When you talk about rehab, some homes are just not worth rehabbing. And we've got some structures, a lot of structures around like that. As a matter of fact, before I end my comments, I had taken a picture of a house and had sent it to the mayor. And I was criticizing. I said, I don't know why the city hasn't torn this down. Look at the front. Look at the back of it. And I was just informed about a month ago that there was a couple living in the house. And I was just appalled and shocked. But and here I had put it on my list for demolition. But hearing again, they've been there a long time. And so I feel bad that people feel like they don't have options, but some of these homes are that bad, sir. I wouldn't live in one. I'm fortunate. My parents constantly upgraded, but people the housing stock some of it is just very challenged. So with that in mind, and what the land bank has been doing and identifying, we just don't have enough money to tear them all down, sir. But, we'd be in better shape leveling a lot and rebuilding. So with that in mind, I see this as the right direction for us to move in, and we've got to bring some redevelopment to our community.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you all for your comments. I do respect your comments. As far as the last part, my problem is not that this is one of a number of solutions. My problem is that most of the time, things like this end up being net harmful, even though they're full. These units are about $200 a square foot. A fraction, tiny fraction of that kind of money redirected into rehabs, not those places that are beyond hope, of course, and home ownership. Would all of a sudden, it is our people who are empowered, our people who are building our city. Our people built this city. Springfield did not build this city. Washington, D.C. did not build this city. The people did. We keep taking from the people their power because we know better. And it is apparent to me when you look at this city and you look at cities all across the country, we do not know better. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
A motion on the floor to approve item A. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Kelly. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to make a motion that item number 23029 be approved.
Seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel. Discussion. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Kelly. Councilmember Jackson.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that item number 230-029 C be approved.
Seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel. Any discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Kelly. Councilmember Jackson.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that item number 23-029 number D be approved.
Seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel. Any discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Kelly. Councilmember Jackson.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that item number 23-029 letter E be approved.
By Councilmember Ruckriegel. Any discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Kelly.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Doolin. Madam Clerk.
23-030 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to concur with the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class CN neighborhood commercial district for the property located at 901, 903, 905, 909, and 911 West McBean Street, and 900, 904, 906, 908, 910, 912, 914, 916, 918, and 920 West Johnson Street, all in Peoria, Illinois.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to turn it again over to Director Doolin.
Okay. Director Doolin.
Thank you, Manager. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I won't repeat a lot of the comments I made with the first item. This is the second project we are referencing. This is specifically a multi-story building on the frontage of MacArthur. The only thing I do want to point out specifically is that part of this project includes some first floor commercial. I think that in a lot of the plans that talked about mixed-use development, they have within their plan identified some commercial space. hopefully to attract a good commercial tenant that is valuable to the neighborhood. And so we would ask for your support of this. One thing I would just like to add, based on the discussion that was had, to completely agree with council's direction, that we see both of these projects as just one of the projects that we're undertaking with our department. I think that it's important to note that home ownership is a big component. I think that's why when we had the American Rescue Plan money, we specifically put money for down payment assistance. Last year, we approved 24 down payment assistance grants for the city of Peoria. 5 of them were in 61605. So it's a small step, but that's 5 homeowners in 61605 with their down payment assistance program. And I think, with both of these programs and even the public infrastructure that I mentioned, I want to mention the work of other entities that are doing work in this area, specifically offering programs to homeowners. METEC has done a fantastic job over the last years of going out and getting federal funds to improve households in 61605. They received a very large grant through the Edwards Settlement for healthy homes. They were actually just a recipient of the same IDA grant we got for whole house rehab for homeowners. And then PCCO has worked very hard over the years for doing some TIF programs where they applied from Federal Home Loan Bank money to specifically do housing rehab programs. In addition to that, the city of Peoria has housing rehab programs with our matching program with our American Rescue Plan money, and our roof program that we recently launched. An additional $300,000 will have it coming to us in June that we usually, in addition to what we spend previously. So these adding additional rental units to this area is not kind of we mission successful, we're going to stop looking. We understand the value in home ownership. We'll continue to promote it. We'll continue to explore with all of our partners all the rehab opportunities that exist for people to stay and live and age in their homes. And the last point I want to address is that I think that, I appreciate Councilman Kelly's comments about, possibly creating opportunities where people just move into nicer units. I know, he thinks of that as a disadvantage. I challenge that as an advantage. I think we have a lot of fantastic landlords in our community. I meet with some of them on a monthly basis. But then every other Tuesday, my code enforcement inspectors meet with a lot of other landlords and administrative hearing officer where we're forcing them to make corrections to their properties. And if this challenges them to improve their properties so they can compete with newer, nicer properties, I don't think we should look at that as a negative. I think we should look at that of them having, if they want to attract a resident to their property and compete with newer projects, then they should invest in their projects. And unfortunately, we just don't see that as much as we need to. And I think, having projects like this, I think the counter to that is maybe it could create some abandonment. They could walk away. But I think we've developed tools the last few years to specifically address when they do walk away and abandon properties of how we can try to obtain them quicker with the land bank and hopefully then get them into hands of someone who's willing to correct them. So with that, Peoria Opportunities Foundation and Willis have some few slides to specifically talk about this project as well.
There we go. Okay, and I will skip some of the introduction pieces here and just head straight to the site plan to give you guys that little bit of orientation. I think the thing that's unique about this project is the commercial space and the fact that it is right on the MacArthur corridor frontage. I think that adds to the catalytic nature of this project. The mixed-use development will help that neighborhood in a number of ways. I think by bringing residents to that area, you have a chance to spur on more mixed development and commercial development along the corridor. It's quite consistent with the plan, not exactly what the MacArthur corridor plan called for, but very close, and I think this will have that same effect of helping the entire area move towards the goals that were there. And then we do have a visual here. It'll be on that corner of McBean and MacArthur, and I think we'll show how that moves that forward. The other thing that I wanted to highlight in this that I didn't touch on earlier is just the timeline. As has been alluded to here, this is the first step to get the zoning in place so that IDA will review our application. We've done a self-score, and we believe that it has a very, very good chance of being funded, at least one of the projects, quite possibly both of the projects. But at that point, the hard work just begins. So we still have to go through permitting. We still have to finalize the design of the building, make sure that it fits with the aesthetic of the community. There's a lot of important steps between now and when we break ground. And even then, there's a year of construction before anyone will be moving in. So this really is the first step, and I really hope you'll support this project the way you did Churchview.
Any questions for Mr. Mann? Okay. Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That is a great location. A lot of people travel that area. I'm excited to see some redevelopment that would come to MacArthur, one of our major thoroughfares. So with that, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that item number 23-030 be approved.
That's seconded by Councilmember Riggenbach. Any discussion? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Kelly. Thank you, Ms. Genzel. Thank you, Mr. Mann. Good luck. Madam Clerk.
23-031 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class R4 single-family residential district for a short-term rental at 813 North Douglas Street in Peoria, Illinois.
Mr. Manager.
Maybe I'd ask Director Doolin or Assistant Community Development Director Allison to come forward to talk about this proposed SCR.
Thank you, Mr. Manager and Council and Madam Mayor. We'll give Joe a break here from his talking. So this is a request before you for a short-term rental at 813 Douglas. It is a one-bedroom. It is proposed to limit the residents to 2. There is no off-street parking available. There is a small detached garage with a very small driveway that doesn't really make it conducive to provide parking. There is on-street parking. With the limit to the 2 residents, we feel that that may also kind of be conducive to helping with the parking situation. With this is in actually 2 neighborhood districts, in the Cottage District and the Moss Bradley Neighborhood Association. This would be the first in the Cottage District and the second in the Moss Bradley Residents Association. Are there any questions specifically that I can answer for you?
Thank you very much. Doesn't look like it. Councilman Graham?
Matt and Lynn, the owners, are sitting to the back of the chamber there, and I'm sorry you had to be here for such a lengthy meeting. I am going to move to approve this with the stipulation that was just alluded to by Assistant Director Allison, no more than 2 adult occupants and no more than 2 cars. And I think we have taken care of any objections coming from the neighborhood, because if this were to be a long-term lease, not a short-term lease, we could not enforce such a stipulation. But with the special use, which Councilor Jensen and I pushed for really hard to be sure we could put some stipulations into place, I think this makes sense and is actually a positive for the neighborhood. I'd move to approve.
Seconded by Councilmember Euler. Any discussion? Councilmember Jensen?
But my understanding was that there were some neighbors that were concerned about this going in this space, but it sounds to me like Councilman Grab may have met with them and addressed those concerns. If that's the case, then I'll support it, but my understanding from the last time I spoke to Councilman Grab and the neighbors, there were some people in the neighborhood that had concerns and did not want it approved.
Councilmember Grab, do you want to respond?
Yes, and you can see in the text what the objections were. The stipulations I've placed on this are responsive to their objections. And if we didn't have a short-term rental approved with these stipulations, this young couple, done a remarkable job, by the way, look at the pictures of the interior, would not have to be bound by these stipulations. They could have more than 2 adults. They could have more than 2 cars. So I think this is the best defense mechanism for the objections as stated by the people who came and participated in the PZ hearing. And that is why I'm moving to approve it. As all of you know, I'm very, very empirical. I evaluate each of these on a case-by-case basis, and I find this to potentially be a far less intense use of the space in our cottage district.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion on the floor to approve. I have a second. No more discussion. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes with 1 nay. Jensen. Madam Clerk.
We are at unfinished business.
Is there any unfinished business? I don't think so.
Then we are on to new business.
Okay, does anybody have new business? Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Manager Smith, don't leave yet. I just wanted to make sure that everybody heard one of the comments that Mr. Mann made as he began his presentation tonight. He said that the first time he met with city staff was one of the most productive meetings with city staff that he's ever had. And I don't exactly know how many of those he's had, but their portfolio is pretty significant. So I would imagine he's had many. So I just think we need to acknowledge our community development team, Director Doolin, Assistant Director Allison, and I was going to call out Land Bank Manager Matt Smith also, but and I don't know who all was at that meeting, but I know those 3 folks were very instrumental in getting us to this point. So I just think when people say Peoria is a hard place to deal with, maybe they should talk to some of the developers who actually do development here. So thank you.
Thank you. That was worth repeating. Councilmember Velpula?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as we heard this evening about Global Fest, so this Global Fest is going to be happening on February 11th in 5 Points, Washington. So if anybody's interested to support or go and have good food, yeah, that's a good place to go.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Sear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. One request for Mr. Manager. Every day now, lately, I'm getting phone calls, and everywhere I go in the city of Peoria, I'm getting comments about the Rivermen. I think it's time to have a conversation, a public conversation about our hockey team here in Peoria. So I don't know how I know how, and it'd be nice to have it on the agenda for February so we can have a public conversation about whether or not we want to make an effort to keep our hockey team here in town or just close the book and let them go. So I think it's time to have that conversation. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Is there any more new business from, okay. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Yeah, for those of you that are high school basketball fans, my son just texted me that Ridgewoods beat Peoria High tonight with 5 overtimes.
Oh my God.
5 overtimes.
Two great teams.
Two
Wow.
great teams, and indeed. Thank you.
Boy, that's unbelievable. Member Graham?
Well, and thank you for mentioning two of our great high schools. As a matter of fact, on Valentine's Day, we're going to be seeing the pride of our city here, the Peoria High Lions, who came in second place in our football tournament statewide. So, you know, we've got a great tradition in the city of Peoria, and we're going to keep that going. Wow, 5. Well, the Community Development Department has asked me to announce this as a reminder to those listening that the 2023 Roof Program Lottery is currently accepting applications. This is a fantastic program that provides income-eligible owners, homeowners, with roof repairs. City is accepting applications for the Roof Program Lottery until Friday, February 10th at 5 p.m. This lottery will be held on Valentine's Day at 10 in the morning. That's the 14th of February for those of you who aren't a Valentine. And city staff will contact all applicants in the days following the drawing to let you know where your number was. You can apply for the program and see what you need to qualify, what the criteria are for assistance at the city's website on the community development page. If you do not have access to the internet, applications are also available in person at City Hall, in the Development Center, or community development staff can mail you a paper application if you call them at 494-8600 and ask for a roof program lottery application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I have one last new business item, and it's called strategic planning. Now, I know I've been talking about this since I got into this job 18 months ago, but we haven't really moved forward in an actionable way. But we do want to begin to move forward now in strategic planning in a comprehensive way that engages all of the council, certainly, but also engages our key stakeholders within the community, our residents, our neighborhood organizations, our businesses, our not-for-profit organizations, those key stakeholders who are all a part of our community, service providers and so forth. We want to inform the budget process. We want to engage citizens in this process. I've had a number of conversations, and I'm sorry that it's taken so long to get to this point, but a number of conversations with both the city manager and the assistant city manager about a process that will take over several weeks, but complete before we begin our budget discussions, which usually start around late September, early October. In order to do it, we need a consultant or a consulting firm to help us to move the process along and help us actually develop a process that engages the people and the council over a period of several weeks. So we're looking to put out an RFP within a couple days to hire a consultant firm. There's been funding for the last couple years that's been set aside for this, that's been approved in the budget. But we want to put out an RFP within the next few days with a timeline of RFP opening around mid-February. That would be around February the 26th. And presentations by the selected firm. We'd have to have a small committee. I've asked a couple council members, Councilmember Sear and Councilmember Riggenbach, if they would join that committee for the presentations that would bring back a recommendation to the council around April the 11th to get the council to approve the firm that will help us out. But I want to ask Assistant City Manager Kimberly Richardson if she would come and talk about that RFP process.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll be very brief. Yes, so we are looking to go out to the bid process this Thursday. And in doing so, we're looking at if there's any individuals, and not only just within the city of Peoria, but outside the community, we'll be reaching out to them to submit their RFP proposals so that we can then have a breadth of consultants to be able to review. We are looking for this experience to, as the mayor said, to be very inclusive of our city council, our employees, as well as the residents and other stakeholders. So within the RFP, one of the things that we recognize is that we're going to be involving some training of our staff to help facilitate conversations, as well as other stakeholders to help facilitate conversations because of the condensed time frame for which we will be doing this process. And I say condensed only because we are also including the budget process within this discussion. And so in doing so, we want to make sure we get as many voices in the community to get feedback to help inform the council and the mayor as part of the strategic planning process. With that being said, if there's any questions from the council, I'll be gladly to be able to answer those questions, and we can also share with you a copy of the RFP that will be going out to the public this week. And in addition to that, if there's any question from the public as well, we are welcome to answer those questions in the city manager's office.
I just wanted to highlight, too, that part of that strategic planning process is taking an inventory of all the strategic or plans that we have within the city. There's a lot of different plans. There's the riverfront plan. There's the downtown development plan. There's the plans that have been done by, I think, Downtown Advisory Council. There's a number, the warehouse district. There's a number of different plans that we have within the city. There's a neighborhood reinvestment plan for certain areas. I think the East Bluff and the South Side that have been approved. But there's lots of different plans, and there's other plans that are taking place within the city. So plans are going on all around us. We want to knit those together, and so that we can really paint a picture of what's happening and what's being planned for Peoria and in terms of investment.
As well as prioritization. I think Councilman Sear during the budget process mentioned that how do we look at prioritizing with the strategic plan that would give us staff clear direction as we build the budget for our next year's fiscal year. So that is the reason why we want to make sure we get this done before the budget process starts.
Yeah. Questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Madam Clerk?
We are at citizens' opportunity to address the City Council, and I believe we received one card.
We do. Ms. Doris Coaster.
My name is Rebecca Billings, and I live at 1016 East Fry Avenue. And I was promised by Joe Doolin that he would help us move. At a recent meeting that was witnessed by Kirsten Meercord and other people, we are a victim of Darwin Homes. We have nowhere to go. No money to move, nowhere to go. And it's all part of a project for you all to move forward with your affordable housing. I work for a living. My husband's on disability. He just recently had brain surgery, and we are expected to move on January 31st. There is no way we can do that. There is no physical, possible way that we can do that. And he promised he would help. Joe Doolin did say that, and he never called us.
Can you stick around?
Yeah, because it's not right what's going on. Okay. And we live in the oldest home on the block.
Thank you. Stick around, please. Ms. Doris Coaster.
Thank you and good evening.
Madam Mayor, City Council members, Mr. Mann and peers, hi.
Hi.
Tonight, I hope there will be both an end and a new beginning. The reality is, our city is facing gentrification. I feel like we're exactly where San Francisco was about 30 years ago. Of the people and groups who want to improve the South Side, I believe at least some should come from the South Side. I humbly ask you to work with those who have a demonstrated commitment to District 1. That includes tax-paying homeowners like myself, Peace Church, Southside Community Center, SCUC, Mike with the Ann Street Gardens you guys talked about earlier, Nourish and other nonprofits, as well as neighborhood associations. I am hoping that everyone will be allowed to be seated at the table. I humbly state this isn't the table. It will have effective communication, mutual goals, holistic answers, and accountability. Now, when I say this isn't the table, it's because it's not complete yet. But you guys are a vital, important part of the answer.
Can I say one more thing about?
No, please don't interrupt.
Thank you, ma'am. I came tonight riding the wave of misinformation. I was told I would be able to speak to the council before you voted, and I felt like I had valuable enough information. I'd like to give it to you now in hopes that maybe it will inform your trajectory going forward. I had two basic reasons for objection to the plan. One of them being communication. I learned not 4 months ago, not 4 weeks ago, but 4 days ago that this plan even existed. And I pride myself on being pretty well connected in the community. So I'm safely saying there are a lot of residents who will find this plan going forward haven't been voted on a complete surprise. The other reason is because of the type of structures that Pivotal is suggesting. They are not healthy for the area. With time, they will eventually detract from the neighborhood, not contribute to or sustain it. In 1990, the Associated Colleges of the Midwest spent thousands on pointed research of public housing. There was a 100-year survey of every public housing that has been completed across the nation. I strongly suggest you either get a copy of the findings or you can just ask someone from the south side of Peoria about it, namely me, because I led the research. There is simply not enough green space around these proposed housing spaces to make people feel that they are not just a number, are not just a financial opportunity, are not just wearing the happy badge that says I'm the recipient of affordable housing. If you look at the history, however many years, I've only been here approximately 20. I'm a happy transplant. But if you note, the efforts to try to help the South End are often thwarted because it lacks this key component, buy-in by the people who live there. Thank you for your time and for hearing my thoughts. Good night.
Madam Clerk?
We are at executive session.
I would like to invite a motion to adjourn and to convene in closed session immediately following adjournment of the City Council meeting pursuant to the Open Meetings Act 5 ILSCS 120/2C11 to discuss pending litigation and pursuant to the Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 120-2C21 for approval by the body of the closed session minutes. I think we need a motion, moved by Councilmember Sears, seconded by Councilmember Euler. Please cast your ballots. Thank you, and thank you for your service.